Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first ever edition of Welcome to the Jungle, based on your Michigan Panthers. And for those who don't know what a panther might sound like, this is actually what it sounds like. And
very aggressive.
Yep, I definitely think it was hunting for some food. I've actually never heard a panther before I found that video.
I think the closest I've heard is like a mountain lion, but they're not. They're related, but not the same. So it's kind of that, there's like a generic kind of Carolina Panther type of growl that you hear on some of the broadcasts. So it's the first time I've heard that one from a real life one. That thing sounded like either it was like trying to scare someone off or intimidate something.
I think it was. Which, I mean, I watched it a little further along, and there were a couple just playing around, and it still sounded about the same.
Huh. Big cats, man. They can hurt you.
Oh, yeah. Enough about the actual Panther. Let's talk about our football team. So, to start, I'm sure most of our viewers in here, whether you're from our Discord that we're a part of, or you've watched my videos, or you've watched his podcast, the USFL podcast.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure most of our audience knows that you're a big Panthers fan.
I mean, if I wasn't a Panthers fan and I came on this show, I think I'd have to stop the show right there and justify to the audience why I'm even on here. What's the get up, Zach? Why are you undercover? Why are you dressed like Jeff Fisher in a way and trying to act like you're something you're not? No, I mean, I'm a Panthers fan. Most of the time pessimistic over the last 2 years, but let's just say that, some things slide your way and you got to take your wins when you can with this franchise, with this organization. So, I got to take my wins. I'm in rally mode. That's what I've been calling it, man. Last 2 weeks, this is rally mode, Zach.
So because I've got you on, and maybe we have some viewers that don't know you, can you take us a little bit through what made you a Panthers fan and what made you gravitate towards the USFL?
Well, I mean, I'm a Panthers fan for the fact that I am right now trying to pick more of a geographical choice is the deal. So, I'm a Bears fan. I'm a Chicago sports fan. Grew up an hour outside of Chicago. I mean, to be honest with you, that kind of is the big rationale is that, I don't have a Chicago team. Closest thing I got in the Midwest is really Michigan. And I also have part of my family lives in Detroit. So it's kind of it's a two-prong really. So I got to go with the Panthers right now. I have had someone ask this question for example, if in theory the league lasts and continues to grow and they do use their trademark for the blitz, say Chicago brings them back, do you bring them back? And to me that's kind of a tough choice. I think I came to the conclusion that even if the blitz came back, I would still have to stick with the original fandom. I'm not a bandwagoner. I stick by that in all of my fandoms. I don't bail. So if I pick one, I stay with it until the day I die. I'm a Panthers fan until the day I die. Even if the Chicago blitz exists, I'll say, hey, nice to have you in the league, but it's a little too late. I already put in my ticket. There's no refunds.
Understandable. So what is it about the USFL that you like? What made you a fan of the league?
Fan of the league? I mean, I love a lot of what the league's doing. Quite frankly, I know that some folks, they don't really care. For example, I know that it's unorthodox with the hubs, but my stance on it has always been that, the history of spring football has been the same song and dance formula. that hasn't really shelled out in terms of we all go to the host cities, we all establish ourselves, we throw away money for like 2 to 3 years, and then we profit by like year 4 or 5. And it's never worked. There's no business model that has worked in that regard to where eventually one of them sticks for like a decade. The only one that comes close to me, you can even make an argument for, is the World League of American Football. But keep in mind, the NFL took that over and ran it by itself, still losing millions upon millions of dollars each season to keep it afloat. So that being said, this model is attracting me. I love spring football first off, so I love just any of that form. I also like the fact that I think that there's a plan here in place to grow as necessary, not grow to what is assumed to be needed. So that's the best I got for you. I mean, most of it's spring football based, but besides that, I think the plan to me is what won me over for the most part. And I've kind of grown fond to having the season end in July. I think it's a good spacer. I do get a few months off to kind of chillax from the NFL. Then I do this, a few months to chillax, back to the NFL grind, So I think the method right after February has its own merits. It's just that I think after the last few times that I followed along with methods like that, I went, yeah, that's quite a lot to just smash in one group. So I kind of like having that spacing from like February to April to where I can just kind of do my own shtick or chill out, kind of take in and absorb like the Super Bowl and the end of the NFL season, and then prep myself and gear up and hit hard into this USFL season. Now number 2, going to be number 3 next year. So, got to be ready. And that it helps a lot. Getting a few months off like that does help a lot.
Last thing I want to, because like I said, you're on the USFL podcast, so you have your fandom, but you're league wide. So last question with that, do you think the approach that Fox took is beneficial, and do you think the going into year 3 with either having all hubs still and maybe adding a hub with adding teams possibly, or having half hubs and half teams on location, do you think that that's the right move? Do you feel like Daryl Johnston and Fox are actually taking the league seriously and wanting it to grow and wanting it to build and almost be like the minor league baseball to the NFL, so to speak?
I mean, I think they're taking it seriously. I haven't seen any reason not. I mean, you look at how Daryl approaches this job. It's basically, to me, I look at it, I think he takes it as like a passion project of his. He started out, and worked his way up. He made his own legendary career with the Cowboys as a fullback, guiding Emmitt Smith. He's already one of the more well-recognized color commentators in the broadcasting scene in the NFL. So that's something he doesn't have to do. But he's stressed like anything that he's talked about with these leagues, like whether it's the AAF, he was with XFL 2.0 in some capacity, and now he takes on basically being the head honcho in terms of the public face of this league right here. I mean, he's embracing, like, this is giving back to the game for him. This is everything he likes to do, and he fully enjoys it. From times I've talked with him, from you watch interviews with him, he loves doing all this. I think he sees the vision, and I have fully believed they're taking it seriously. I mean, Fox is too. You look at the commitments they've made with some of their partners in cities so far. We had a piece come out from one of the, I think, I'm trying to remember the business journal it was in Memphis. Commercial, or is it Commercial Appeal? It might be a USA Today article piece that they put out. Gannett Media, that is for this type of stuff. And they talked about, with the renovations of the Liberty Bowl, I know a little off topic from Michigan, but for that example, they talked about that and how they spent $250,000 running fiber optic cable to flip the broadcast like camera locations to make it more easy for fans to come in, be in the shade in future seasons, and it'll change how the broadcasts are viewed on TV for not only their game, for not only the Showboats games, for the Tigers games. If you're talking Detroit, I mean, They came in. They've been getting down with community groups in Detroit very much so. I mean, a lot of it's like they prove their commitment, I think, by any hub they've gone to. They have said we are part of the community. Like once we make that commitment, we have to stick to our commitment. I haven't seen a scene yet where they've bailed out of something that they said they were going to do. And I think the bigger conversation a lot of people get into is, well, are they moving fast enough? And it's like, well, this is a money-driven business, and football is a big budget sport. So as much as it does kill me that you don't see like stuff that moves faster, which I think is what people go and they're like, oh, well, this isn't as committed as other leagues. Well, I digress, and I say yes, it is, because it is about being economically responsible to yourself, and then they're also still being socially responsible by being in the communities and not just being there to say they're being there and then saying, oh, I hope we're still here. I hope the money's coming in. No, they know they can budget to do that, and then they can step in, give back to their communities, and make their point and say, we aren't leaving. We are showing our stuff off. We know what we're doing, and we are not overstepping our boundaries or overstepping our financial commitments or overspeaking our talking points. We know what we're doing. Like this is what we're giving you. We give it 100% commitment or more, and we're going to keep doing that until we truly say we can't. Because they play by the book. I mean, like I said, Detroit, I think they knew that was going to be a swing because it was you need the right partners to do big swings, like to get to Ford Field, to get to play in downtown like that. So what do? You go out and you make good relationships with Dan Gilbert, who is a massive real estate mogul out there. Same guy that owns the Cleveland Cavaliers, basically has been helping the revitalization of a lot of real estate pieces in downtown Detroit, which I learned a lot post that first press conference that they had when they announced about Ford Field being the location for season 2 for a hub. You talk about the Detroit Lions being kind of a behind the scenes, like unofficial partner with the Panthers, them helping out in ways. I mean, this is stuff you gotta all put in. That to me, anyone that doubts that they're fully committed, I think doesn't look at the full picture, or they're trying to get everything they want, not realizing how much it does take to get what you really want. It is a long haul. That's the thing. You got to prove you are around for the long haul in this sport. Spring football in general too. I mean, Jesus, the amount of ventures that have died in such a short time. Like there's so much, like it's only been a few years still with like multiple leagues, but there's still such a stigma in casual fandoms of football that they just feel like this is going to disappear soon and they just want it to go away. Well, it's not going away. And I don't think every year this goes with another season, I get more and more confident that we have a product, either this or even competing leagues, that it's here to stay. This brand of football is going to be around. We have a place to watch football beyond just the fall for us diehards, and hopefully sooner rather than later someday, more casual fans buy into it too.
Absolutely. Now to shift this back to Michigan, do you think bringing a hub to Detroit was the smart move? I mean, you had, Ypsilanti with Eastern Michigan,
yep,
where they do practice. You had Ann Arbor, which, I mean, it probably looked the same at Ann Arbor as it does at Ford Field.
Well, I mean, they were housing people at Ann Arbor, though. That was the difference. So you have them living in Ann Arbor. They would travel to Ypsilanti to practice over at Eastern Michigan was the deal. So that's kind of the setup. Like they live in Ann Arbor, but they go and they'll route themselves to Eastern Michigan, which is just northwest of Detroit. And then game day, they would go, if they were in town, whichever teams they were, they would bus themselves to downtown. But anyway, I mean, I was wanting to jump in as soon as you said, do you think it was worth it? And it's 1,000 times yes. I think that a lot of people were, and even myself included, I said yes at the beginning and went yes, although it is a big swing, because of the fact that this is your biggest venue, this is your biggest metropolitan market. again, you're adding another market, which, as we know, more expenses. So, the league has to budget itself. It has to know what it's doing to try and get that next step. They've stated since the beginning, they want to do this where they get the right deals, the right timings, and the right partnerships to do that. And again, they did the right partnerships. We just talked about that. Like I said, you get Dan Gilbert on your side, Rocket Mortgage guy himself, which, the guy's got patches on. He's sponsoring the league. Obviously, he did a good job there. So I think that was a big deal, And I think I was confidently saying yes at the time, as in, yes, I am fully behind this. Whole season's worth down, and especially the way that the last game ended, where it looked like you possibly had at least close to, if not a matching crowd size as the home opener was, which, you and I were both at that game. It was excellent atmosphere for a football game. And, when I talked with the ref, he was at both of them, and he said that the last one was even more rowdy than week one, which you could see on camera. They won. It's the only game out of the 5 they won at home. Crowd was into it. It was a perfect sign-off to the regular season, and now they're a playoff team. So big win, win, win. 1,000 times yes. And, anything, even beyond that, the folks I talk to that are, league folks on that, or at least that have connections with the league, they've said that the partnerships they've made in Detroit have been incredible. I think it was a massive win this year, and they're definitely going to, they've already come out, they're saying they're back next year no matter what. That was earlier in the season, so they've recommitted to that. It's good. It's 1,000 times yes at this point in the stage. They made the right choice. Along like that and the Memphis choice, both the two new hubs, and having to switch out a team for a new team in a new city. They both, I thought they were both home runs for what they represented and how they panned out for the year.
So do you think that the Panthers coming back to Michigan, I know as you stated, we were both at the home opener. The crowd looked really good, in my opinion. I thought it looked really good.
Oh, I'm with you. It was, home crowd was great. I think the only complaint I had on the day, and credit, no offense, it's a lot of them were Lions fans, but I was definitely the guy in the crowd trying to be like the rowdy, loud yelling crowd guy, and I think a lot of people were trying to feel out the scene with this new brand of football in town. People knew about the Panthers last year, but again, this is kind of like a side effect of being in a hub system, is that you have people that know, but there's not as much of the local engagement and the local feel gets lost. So I think a lot of people that week one came and they were trying to feel out, hey, is this worth my time investing into this? Is it worth getting interested? And credit, they lost, but you saw by the end of the year, week 5 comes around, they still had solid draw for what it was worth in that market for most of that 4-game stretch. And again, it's 4 straight games, so keep that in mind. That is hard to do as a ticket person. To sell people and getting either new folks in seats or getting repeat people to come back every week. People have jobs, people have obligations to do. That's hard to do. They did the best they could there, and I thought it was a really solid job. And then they finished off again with week 5 being that big workup to that game winner in scenario. So yeah, absolutely. I don't have any doubts.
So do you think that them coming back has had a positive effect on the community in Detroit and the surrounding areas, and kind of, I guess, opening the eyes of some Michiganders of hey, once the Super Bowl's over, we still have football?
Well, I think at base level, you can say yes. They ran local TV ads that had specific Detroit-style advertising to them that I saw. Full disclosure, I work in television. I've seen some of those ads. So, the USFL ran a lot of specific local focus ads, like Birmingham, you had Stallions focused ads. Memphis, you had Memphis focused ads. The only one would have been Canton, where you have kind of that mixed bag, like a traditional hub advertising. And you can see one of the guys that's chiming in on the broadcast, can't confirm its positive impact on the entire state. And honestly, I think just being there, you get another thing for families that, it's affordable fun in Detroit to go out to. Again, these tickets, and unless the USFL keeps having to raise up prices, which, I mean, nothing's guaranteed, but I mean, they had to last year, but they were still extremely affordable tickets to go to a football game. That's a professional football game. I don't live in Detroit. I'm assuming Williams Hugo here lives in Michigan, or at least lives near the area. I see the Lions logo. But as you can see, social media wise, they're going out in the community. They're visiting schools. They're visiting, many other fundraising activities to help build up community engagement and kind of give back. So that's how I look at it. And here's another quote here from Williams Hugo. Still got more people that need to see the team in league, but in general, most are pretty accepting of the Panthers. And I think one thing that goes with that is that the Panthers brand still has some good nostalgia from what I've witnessed out there. The USFL is more of a nostalgic league than compared to its competitor, because it is leaning on, now that it's got the 80s trademark, or a lot more of the 80s stats, the 80s like kind of callbacks that they got via the settlement on the lawsuit last year. The Panthers, I mean, they leaned into that. They have been selling, and people, as you saw in the first game, selling 1983 championship T-shirts. That brand, it is the last professional football team to win a championship in the state of Michigan. And I've had, like, you bring that up, and there are some folks like my uncle, he was younger, and like basically was just starting his life closer to when the Panthers ended their tenure. And, he would have people say that, and it's a funny, like, it was kind of like brought as kind of a joke because of Lions woes at the time, but like, it is true. Like like there were people that were hyped up about the Panthers for those 2 years that they existed in Michigan. And it still brings back a lot of good memories for their existence when they were in the USFL. So, I think it is an overall good. I think that, the USFL's mission that they've been doing, again, showing that they want to be part of their community. They have shown that, I think, tenfold across their 4 hubs. It's an overall good. I think so. Your Williams here is just kind of emphasizing that, but I was definitely going to say absolutely. I think they have been an overall good. I haven't seen anything to where you have anyone from Detroit or Michigan that I think has been saying, "Oh, this has not been worth the experience." I think that it's been basically all positive. I mean, yeah, there's more stuff they can do, obviously, but I think the more time you're in town, the more you keep going back and making those local partnerships or reinforcing the ones you got, like say with Dan Gilbert or with the city, that will continue to build over time. I mean, one thing I loved, my last note on this, is week 9, they put out a great social media post with it was with Big E, for the MC of the games, which I thought was also fun, having someone of that stature, like that celebrity, be an MC in that building, because he made those games a lot of fun. To me, they put a great promo together. It was with him and the head of, I believe it was tourism in Detroit. I don't remember the name, and I don't know if that's the correct position that I listed, but they basically made a little video highlighting some of the highlights of downtown Detroit. And that's kind of what the USFL has been doing for 2 years. Birmingham, that whole year they were in there just as the hub in Birmingham, that's all they did. They highlighted all the beauty that Birmingham has to offer as like hey, this is maybe not the same Birmingham that you know. And they've been kind of doing that with Detroit. I mean, Detroit, when I've talked with folks like Tony Paul this past year, I asked about the question about the Detroit comeback, and they're like, well, we don't think we think the Detroit comeback has been already accomplished in some ways. And I think that video highlighted a lot of stuff that shows, hey, downtown Detroit is kind of cool. Like there's some neat stuff you can go down and check out. And that's kind of the stuff the league does. Like they want to show off their cities. Like these are special places and partnerships. They are saying, we like what we've got here. That's our commitment. And that raises eyebrows, and that helps reinforce relationships at the same time.
Definitely. And I know you touched on or mentioned too about the 80s like trademarks. And I have got to say, there's a reason that the wallpaper behind us is what it is, because
of course,
to me, yes, I do like the modern day logo, but this logo, not only am I partial to it because it was on one of the free giveaway shirts when we went to the opener. This logo is absolutely awesome. And I do think it definitely emphasizes the Panther itself, in my opinion, a lot more than the modern day one. I mean, like I said, the modern day has its benefits, but this one is the one they should be using.
Yeah, I do say that I think at least it's the nostalgia factor. Obviously, this is the one that I think a lot of people from back in the day resonate the most because it's very 80s-esque and very, I think, eye-popping. You know, to me, I think more people remember the in terms of how they did the helmets now and how they did them back then. Just the way that they designed the helmet, I think, was different than what you've seen a lot of in the cases. But I guess my point on it would be I'm fascinated to see what they go further in the future with using old logos, memorabilia, you name it. We're slowly getting more of that this year. We've seen that grow a little bit, you know, and they've done a good job, I think, introducing it. I think it's going to continue to go as long as we keep seeing these relationships get built. I mean, we saw Larry Zonka on the sideline in Memphis for that Birmingham game, which you remember Larry Zonka was like publicly outcrying, how dare they, you know, how dare we have these, you know, brands and that we've been owning this, and, you know, things get settled up and now everyone's buddy, everyone's happy, and it grows that. And that's because guys got together and they worked things out. And, you know, I think that's what you get to see with this. And I hope that we get to see in the future, wishful thinking, I would love to see like a retro throwback game where one of the 5 home games, or maybe more if someday the schedule were to expand for any reason, although that might be a little tough right now or any time in the near future. But say in your 5 home games, one of them's a retro night. You take that old logo, that old logo, put it on the helmet, so the similar design, and then you have a specific one-off jersey, or maybe your retro jerseys you use in the future seasons, and it's to the stylization of more the 80s look, you know, more blocky, more plain design on it. I think it'd be kick-ass. I would love to see that for, like, imagine the Showboats, who would have a complete color swap and a completely different logo on their helmet. You know, the Panthers you could tell it would be definitely different. So I want to see that. And again, that logo does, like I said, it has nostalgia factor. There are plenty of people in Michigan that remember the Panthers before the Panthers came back in 2022. And so, yeah, absolutely, you know, it's recognizable. I think I would love to see it on retro gear more. I think next year, hopefully when they continue to build up even more of the merch shop, I am hoping we see like a bigger retro collection start to grow. Just getting more stuff under your feet. That would be a great year 3 item or postseason item.
Absolutely. So with that being said, I think we should go ahead and jump right into the bulk of the show. Now, coming out of 2022, Michigan did not look its best. And even though Michigan only got 2 more wins than last season, they still not at times look their best. I mean, obviously there's improvements.
Oh, sure.
They made the playoffs, so of course. What's your view as a Panthers fan of the season?
Well, I mean, it's a success for the fact we're even in the playoffs this weekend. And really that could, I think that you do call it a success for this. If they lose to Philadelphia, I would say it's about par for the course for last year, given that it's 1 extra win. But I also would put it where I think you could see either way if they don't get to Canton this weekend. You can see it as a disappointment because they would have finished at the bottom of the barrel in a winnable division with kind of this like feast or famine kind of gameplay. You know, one of the better defenses in the league, but they couldn't get out of their way offensively, hot or cold at random. And the fact that you would have lost all 5 home games, I think that would have been, a bit more of a dagger than last year where you're a hub team completely. If you lost at home for a fifth straight time, well, a 5th time this year, but 5 straight home games, and you do that in front of your arguably what could have been close to the largest crowd of the season with week 1 or around that ballpark number, yeah, that's a bit disappointing. So I mean, playoffs, you got to mark it a success. Last year they were 2-8. They had to fight their way to get the number 1 pick off of the Tank Bowl with Pittsburgh, and they were able to claw it out and somehow find a way to win when it mattered most. So gotta give them props. It's a success. It still is weird because, trust me, about 2 weeks ago, I definitely, as much as I was going to be rooting for them week 10, my confidence level absolutely was not at the level I am right now, where I'm just very happy about where we're at. I definitely was going, man, we have let a lot of stuff slip underneath what we could have been just going on this year. That's my own thing, is I look back at the year, Maulers obviously had our numbers, so I'm, definitely nervous for this weekend because Pittsburgh has, had their way this season. The 2 weeks prior, the loss to New Orleans, where, you win the turnover battle, you get all this offense real early in the third quarter, and then proceed to do absolutely nothing with an entire quarter and just let it slip away. That was, I think, hurting. And then to add onto a little bit extra here with week 10, and again, our buddy Williams here bringing up a good point of something I'll answer with this answer. So doubling up, you start EJ Perry with, he gets signed a week prior, and then he's given only 1 week of starting reps and is thrown into the fire. And this is with Josh Love, who, yes, on the surface level, you can go, well, he's a 2-time player of the week. And you're like, true. He had 2 great games this year that he went wild for. But I counter that with inconsistent play, inconsistent, I think, coordination with your offensive coordinator, passes that, to me, he was not getting the ball over his line at times, and I think he had a lot to do with the batted down footballs as well as his offensive line. I think there's evidence for that. So you add all this into play, and it just wasn't working. And, they took a big gamble putting EJ in. That's a pretty big gamble for a win-and-in game. It wasn't the reason they won. Special teams won that game, but they did enough offensively and I think showed progress as to what they might have wanted to do during the year, which is more quick throws, more on time, more kind of rhythm passing that they showed in the third and fourth quarter, that you can say, okay, EJ, if you give him another week, maybe we have a better shot perhaps this coming week, and it might make things a little more interesting in Canton, Ohio. So, yeah, it's a success. Playoffs alone are a success, but I think there's a lot of facets to it, and it really could have broke either way. Really could have, Tyler. I mean, without a doubt.
So going down the schedule here, I think the biggest one to me that stands out is I give them a break with that first New Jersey game, the one that we went to, the one at home.
Oh, yep.
because of the fact it is the first game in Ford Field in so long, or in the state of Michigan, period. There was a lot of hype behind them. I think it was a situation of the lights being too bright. After that, it's like I was even saying on my videos that this is the one game you can afford to lose. You need to go 3-1 to have some kind of success this season. And they went 0-4, and they still made the playoffs.
Right. I mean, it did not feel like it should have been that way, but yeah. Anyway, I'll let you finish the question. I don't want to take that away.
I mean, like I've told you all year, congrats on the payback to Ref. He won the grudge match. I
mean, it wasn't looking too spiffy for a while there, and I think his Panthers gimmick, or ref's law as he was calling it, was certainly having some sort of effect for most of the year, and then finally ran out of steam at the right time, or reversed itself as he's calling it in Week 10. Which, hey, you know what? I'll take it. Here's the thing with me with Michigan. That week three loss to New Jersey. You know what? I definitely think it. I think that some cracks were shown against Philadelphia with some of the turnover woes and a few kind of batted balls, or like just how they were playing. Philadelphia was a different team by the end of the year, even though they lost to Michigan. There were some factors to that in the second half. But that New Jersey loss in particular, you know, I think the Generals, that was the best version of the New Jersey Generals, the one I think everyone expected the whole season to be. Run heavy. DeAndre Johnson played his best game of his season during that game, besides maybe the matchup against Philadelphia later in the year. That's the only other time I can really think he dominated in the passing game the way he did that day. And he also ran like a madman along with Darius Victor. And that was the Generals team I thought we were going to get, and that they were going to take the North. They got things in order, and we're like, all right, back to business. You know, them in Philadelphia eventually were like, here we go. It's the same old song and dance. Pittsburgh has a great defense, but they can't get out of the way offensively. Luckily, they got enough things in order. They got their offense in order and calm enough to where they could complement that defense, and they won the North. Went from worst to first. But that Detroit game, I think that was the game we thought that New Jersey was going to be all the way back. Didn't turn out to be the case, whether it was, you know, in-game injury forcing Mike Riley to experiment with QBs, because as he said in one of the post-game press conferences that he, quote, wanted to do this all along with Kyle Lauletta. That was actually their game against Philadelphia, the first matchup. So whether it was that, whether it was, you know, playing around with how they did their running backs this year, because Trey Williams didn't have as many touches for mysterious reasons. Darius Victor was limited when really he should have been getting a lot more touches. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on with that squad. Honestly, the North was just weird this year in so many ways. I mean, I think New Jersey, I say sabotage in terms of unintentional. Like New Jersey, to me, I felt unintentionally sabotaged themselves with so many personnel decisions. And then I think Philadelphia, a lot of this came down to early season was a problem because they didn't play to their strengths like they did late in the year. They didn't try and get the passing game in rhythm. They didn't try and let Case Cookus get the ball out in a timely fashion. They focused on a lot of the deep vertical passing game and limited running. And one thing Philadelphia didn't upgrade last offseason, they didn't upgrade their line. And early season returns were a lot of sacks, a lot of hits. Offense wasn't going anywhere. And eventually Bart Andrus and Case and company, they all went, oh, that's what we weren't doing last year. And they went back to what was working. Only thing was they let 3 games in a row at the end of the season once they went 4-3 slip. Now, credit, you got to keep in mind who they were playing, although some caveats. You know, first off, Birmingham. They lost by a game-winning touchdown, 30 seconds on the clock, to what is going to probably be the league MVP. And can't knock it. That was one of the best games of the season, one of the most competitive games of the season. I think it made a lot of us hope for a rematch for Philadelphia and Birmingham Part 2 because of how good that ending was. So you got to mark that one off. New Jersey comes out of nowhere the next week and plays similar to how they played against Michigan, funny enough, where I'm going, this is the New Jersey I'd been waiting for all year. And I was like, there you go. New Jersey's back. They found the formula. It took several weeks of screwing around and, you know, doing all this stuff to kind of fix things and kind of try and figure out what they wanted, when all along, all they needed to do is run their offense like they had been in previous years. DeAndre Johnson being a focal point, getting passes out in a timely manner, getting the run game active and being focused with your 2 best backs, Trey Williams and Darius Victor. So they ran to a perfect storm. Philadelphia was too little too late in that contest. And then Michigan. Honestly, like I said, a lot of people, I think, they were like, all right, Philadelphia's in. Michigan's changed their QB out. They have looked sloppy for a majority of the year. They're going to have this in the bag. And I think a few things, both good efforts on the special teams. Marcus Sims is forever in my debt for a block punt touchdown that he forced, for the returns he gave to that Michigan offense. So I think that was huge. But the other caveat that doesn't get talked about enough, I think, between a lot of circles, there were a lot of receiver injuries for the Philadelphia Stars in the second half. Corey Coleman wasn't in the second half. He was knocked out of the game, and he was a big factor as to why Philadelphia got to 20 points in the first half in the first place. He opened up passing lanes. He already had 53 passing yards on his own stat sheet. He could have easily had a 100-yard game the way he was going, and injury circumstances knocked him out, and that changed the game for Philadelphia. They didn't have that game-changing receiver on that side to distract Levante Taylor or like a Butler or company. You know, they were able to get a little more freedom. Terry Wright was in there, but he wasn't as actively involved, or they didn't get as many opportunities because he wasn't the second option. He had to be the primary option. DeAndre Overton wasn't getting as many opportunities. Pro Wells had to step up, but they didn't need to use him that much this year, and sure enough, he didn't step up in a timely manner for them as well. And it just kind of fell apart, you know, and then Michigan's defense kind of shored up. They didn't have to worry about one receiver dominating on one side, and they were able to play and kind of just steadily hold back a tide that Philadelphia could have presented. Not to mention you have Dexter Williams going down with what looked to be a pretty severe knee injury, and perfect storm. You know, I mean, Michigan's got to be again, successful season like we talked about. Happy they're there, but I mean, Jesus, like I said, the North, very wild division this year. A lot of circumstances and a lot of personnel choices, I think, derailed the top two teams last season. And, you know, couple that with some great improvements from Pittsburgh, and this is how we get worst to first finish in that division, and it's the ugliest looking division of the two in the USFL by record.
The other one that sticks out to me and makes me like sit here, look at my screen every day and go, why didn't they change anything, is after week 4. I think that you could kind of slowly see that, okay, what's our production? Our production's going down. It's gone down by almost, well, actually more than double. If you want to compare it to week 1, it's gone down by triple. Did you see? Obviously, they didn't. If I remember correctly, they went with Josh Love the entire time until Philadelphia.
Yes,
sprinkling in, of course, the backups. Do you think that a change at quarterback sooner, preferably after you gave at the time, worst team in the entire league their first win, do you think that a change at quarterback at that moment would have maybe, obviously maybe because we'll never know, do you think that it would have maybe helped towards a more positive outcome for the season?
I don't know if it would have. Say been like a big upgrade. I think a lot of people were curious about Eric Berrier. I was definitely curious. I think after the Memphis game, you know, I'd kind of been starting to think more about that. I think after Pittsburgh, where that first Pittsburgh matchup, if you go back to that one, a lot of Detroit's own downfall was because they couldn't capitalize on the opportunities that their defense gave them in that contest. I mean, there were a few times you got turnovers in Pittsburgh territory, and either you saw an interception throw away that opportunity, or you would have a failed scoring attempt. Like that was it. You know, they scored 7 points in that first one, 7 points per game against Pittsburgh right now for both matchups. But in the first one in particular, that one raised a red flag to me where I'm going, okay, this is an offensive identity problem, and maybe some quarterbacking woes to kind of tie in, maybe some cross wires somewhere. And I mean, that continued with Birmingham too. You know, they stuck with Josh Love. And credit, you know, again, we know Josh is capable of those games because immediately after that Stallions contest, we're talking all the way down in week 7, he goes and has his best performance of the year against the New Jersey Generals. And we're going, see, that guy is there. Where has this guy been all season? And I think, you know, after the New Jersey contest and then New Orleans again, you know, still played pretty well. It's just they couldn't execute in the second half. And I think the final nail in the coffin, you know, they had probably been fighting for Josh all year, and maybe they had, and this is just my assumptions and speculation, I don't know anything about the practices, but given the fact they stuck with Josh Love and they didn't go with Eric, and eventually they would let go of Eric Berrier, to how this is how they led to signing both EJ Perry and Brian Lewerke as well. I think they saw in practice that maybe they weren't going to get what they wanted out of Eric to elevate above what Josh was giving them at practice. And keep in mind, Carson Strong was an option until Carson Strong was knocked out for the year with his season-ending leg injury. So they were debating it. It's just that your best other option with the big arm got knocked out. So you kind of have to go, do we believe in Eric, or do we feel Josh is the best choice? And I think that's what they did. And you see Williams here coming in again. Josh Love just doesn't know how to improvise. That's a little bit of it. I think that he does get into a bit of a mode where if it's not on time or if it's not right there, he does kind of start to scramble and panic a little bit. And again, I don't like his throwing arc. To me, that doesn't get talked enough. He throws a low arcing ball over the offense. It is very susceptible to being knocked down. It is one of the most frustrating things when I watch Josh Love because he throws it very low over the line. He doesn't throw arcs usually. He throws a lot of these bullets, and they're more susceptible as long as you kind of plan the timing and he's going to throw it right above your head. You just throw an arm up there and you hope to God it hits it. And I mean, it was common to where it would kill drives every single week. And I think, like I said, I think they were riding with him because that was their best choice. And so while this was going on, they're seeing the division is kind of crumbling around them. Again, speculation. This is my entire guessing game of work on this. They're seeing the divisions crumbling around them. They're going, okay, we are right here. Like the teams around us are not pushing ahead. We need to try and throw some Hail Marys out there and see what's going on of what we could do. And sure enough, EJ Perry is available. And again, EJ had a pretty darn good preseason. He was on the Jaguars, same team that Kyle Sloter was on as well. And he performed admirably in the preseason. He had just come out of college. He was needing a destination to go. And I think they looked at him and went, hey, you're available? You want to come? Maybe you'll get a shot to play. And so they sign him on. They get Brian Lewerke, who's out there. They sign him on, revamp the QB room, and say, okay, if Josh doesn't improve, we can go to someone else, pick the best of the other two, and then work from there. And I think the final nail in the coffin was that final Pittsburgh game because that one, it would have solidified their playoff hopes. It would have put them at ease going into Week 10. And instead, you see a 4-interception game, and these were some ugly picks. Like, these weren't just batted balls or, like, drops. These were ugly interceptions, weren't good on the timing. And I think this coaching staff between Eric Marty and, Mike Nolan especially, who knows his defense, Steve Brown's defense, is holding its end of the bargain every week. It is doing the best it can. But if you have turnovers and a lot of lackluster production – eventually the other side's just going to play better is what happens. And a lot of times that's what happened with Michigan. And I think they just had enough and they said, screw it. You know what? We'll throw a Hail Mary. I don't want to see the season go take a nosedive because we can't settle down and call reasonable plays or get the offense in a rhythm. And they made that adjustment. It was ballsy for any team. Again, winning in Week 10, EJ just coming onto the team 2 weeks prior, just getting starting reps that week. Pretty ballsy move. And, you could see in game, he wasn't fully in sync, fumbled a few snaps, miscues on handoffs, but he did what he needed to do. And as Hugo here said, improvisation. That's how EJ was rolling during the contest. You saw some of them, he was running on his own. I think that EJ's a little more mobile. You saw he was getting involved with some running plays later in that contest. They had this great designed kind of like bootleg run where they had the two tight ends and I believe Reggie Corbin go out and block for him, got him 9 yards. That was a great play. And again, something I loved in the broadcast is my final point. You hear EJ on the broadcast mic. And this is something I think some Panthers fans were wondering about with the offense was, is it the offensive scheme too that's hurting this? And you heard EJ, one key mic piece that I loved was, why are we running all these deep routes? And, you sit there and you go, why is that he asking that? But you think about this. If you are getting covered with all the deep routes and you have no safety valve for throwing, you're screwed. you are screwed because either you have to get out of the pocket or you take a sack. And I think he finally saw that in this first half and went, why do we not have more safety valve options? And that's something I had seen all year. It felt like Eric Marty's offense was a lot about throw it vertically, get it down there 10 yards plus, a lot more of these deep passes because we're going to try and force the issue. And there were a lot of times where it didn't feel like there was crossing options. There were options you could just dump it off and let the guy take the yards and beat the linebacker in the second level. And I think you saw in the second half, I know Mike Nolan said they didn't make any adjustments at halftime in the press conference after the game. I call a little BS because I bet Eric Marty and EJ talked with each other. EJ goes, hey, can we get a little bit more timing routes? Like things that are like, I throw 5 yards, the receiver gets another 2 or 3, we move the chains a few plays later. And you saw in the second half they did that. I bet that finally clicked, and I'm hoping that continues because that was something that was, I think, a lot of times sorely missed. It usually felt like you had to go for the home run ball in this offense this year. And it won them 3 games. It made fun football, but when it wasn't working, it abso-freaking-lutely wasn't working. And I'm hoping if you're going against Pittsburgh, you have to take what you get for how good that defense is.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that might help. And that just a big combination. I think that was just that 4-pick game. Week 9 was Josh's last straw. He was their best option, and then they retooled and said, okay, we got a different QB room. We're going to take a shot. They did, and it's EJ's team right now. You even see in the depth chart that came out, EJ and Brian are the QBs. Josh is the emergency QB. So they clearly said enough is enough in week 9, and they switched him out and put him down as the final reserve. That just shows you how it got to this point.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, I was at the week 9 game against Pittsburgh, and yes, the line does have some problems because even though, all USFL defense is littered with Maulers guys. Another thing that we can turn to after this is the defense. The defense for Michigan is absolutely. I think it's really good. It's almost it's almost like top tier.
It so much is, and even not just me, but you're in the same Discord I am. Jaron Horton's in there too, and even Jaron said in our own chats he thinks Michigan's defense is pretty good, and I mean he's running the best defense in the league right now. I'm going to take that man's word for what is gold, because it's a good defense. I think pressures wise, I think causing havoc and getting turnovers. I thought it did a good job. It just gets overshadowed when you have an offense that is incompetence is putting them in awkward situations almost week in and week out. That really is kind of the defining story of a lot of these contests was, Michigan's defense, when given opportunities, when it was a standard drive, usually holds its own. But eventually you'd see the Panthers offense or special teams in some regards get in its own way and completely derail a game. Not saying that the Panthers had given up drives. There were times. That first New Jersey game, by the way, that was arguably one of the worst performances the defense had all year. And I mean, legitimately, it was a lot more defensive lapses in terms of the run game, in terms of the pass game. That was its worst game all year, was week 3 in Detroit. After that, a lot of it came down to just miscues and mismanagement on the offensive side of the ball. And I think that if you have an offense like that second half offense with EJ, where it is just trying to, keep on a schedule, keep moving. If you find the big play, do it, but keep on a schedule first things first. You can let that defense do its thing. Because that's the thing. You look at those Pittsburgh matchups, for example, they're getting 3-4 sacks right back at you on the other side, or getting an interception or 2 off of Troy Williams or James Morgan. Troy Williams mostly, because that was who they played both those times. It's just that you would see on the flip side of the coin, they would do much worse. And then they would get in their own way. Pittsburgh's defense would either take over, or it would put their offense in a position to where if you're Michigan, what do? You have to play razor thin and be that much more perfect because your opposite side of the ball can't do its job. So this is going to be that's going to be a good matchup, because if Michigan's offense can be any bit of efficient like they were in the third and fourth quarter with a few of the drives they had, this game could be way closer than the previous 2 contests.
Oh, absolutely. I do think it will be. I tend to go back to the Week 9 game. You were saying that some of the passes were just bad, and they absolutely were. I mean, there was one interception that, like, the thing to me with Love is when he has an arc, his arc is either just weird in general, or it's so high that it leaves the ball short. Because it looked to me like one, at least maybe two of the interceptions were like at least 5 yards in front of the receiver. And then my biggest pick with Love for the New Jersey game that we all went to was, I could tell from the end zone view that I had that basically Love, like you said, it's a beanball, and it's usually up here, or it's down way too low, almost by the ankles. And it's just not a good look. And like I said, it just left me scratching my head as to why they went with him for so long. Now, when I did see the Lewerke signing, I thought, okay, maybe this is it. I thought, is this a threat to Love, saying like, you need to turn it around, or you're not going to be the starter anymore, which in the long run it basically was. It just took for them to sign another quarterback in EJ Perry. Or my intentional thought was, well, we've probably done seeing the last of Josh Love as the quarterback, because it's my theory that why else would you bring him in other than to be the starter as soon as you possibly can.
Right.
And your comment with EB about why he never started makes sense. I mean, if you're seeing the same production from both quarterbacks, what's the purpose in changing QBs?
Pretty much. You're kind of stuck. Again, hypothesis, speculation, what you call it, but that's the only thing I can think of. Because if Carson Strong's healthy, there is way more of a case, I think. And they were testing it. Even mid-game, they would throw Carson in, and they would say, you know what, we need a spark. And I think that if he doesn't get knocked out earlier in the year, that at some point they just say, screw it, Carson, you're going in. We'll play this kind of short leash game until one of you plays up, which is usually not good, but it felt like it was heading that direction. But once Carson went knocked down and they didn't get someone really signed immediately that was, I would say, a threat to Josh, and again, Josh, he had good performance against New Jersey and had that second, later in the season kind of renaissance of performances, in terms with that and the New Orleans Breakers contest. You're like, okay, well then, yeah, we can hold off on that. We don't have to hit the panic button or make these rash choices. But again, once you get to a certain point and you either had no choice at say part of the year, or eventually you said, okay, we have to throw a Hail Mary on this one. Like I said, week 9. That's what it was. So I think that's the best way to put it, because the Carson Strong argument with him going out just plays into that so much, because of how much was put around Carson Strong in terms of hype when he was signed on later in the free agent process during the offseason. So, yeah, I think that's a big deal. And if it sucks, because EJ, a lot of us actually liked EJ last year when he stepped in and played against New Jersey. So I was kind of shocked he didn't get looks. But again, things change, or maybe not, performances don't stay the same in practice, or Eric Marty and Mike Nolan maybe had a different connection on QB and discussions on that than say Eric Marty and Jeff Fisher. I'm not sure. That being said, I mean, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, whoever listens later, but Eric's the guy that runs the offense. I mean, Mike Nolan's a defensive coach. He does have a DC, but Eric is one of the guys that was brought on post Jeff Fisher to continue the same offensive production they had last year. So I think there's a lot. It doesn't get talked enough about because it's Mike Nolan who's the head coach, but I think the more the year went on, the more we have to start going, okay, what's with Eric Marty's offense as well? Like, what's Eric doing differently now? 2 weeks he starts off hot, and then extreme cold streak, all of a sudden but then we get that blip against New Jersey, and it's like, what's going on? So I think they did I think, like I said, this is what they're going to stick with now, and I think they're confident that, hey, we do have a guy that maybe, is fitting in, or is. I'm not saying Josh didn't do this, but again, you hear EJ on the hot mic during week 10, during that first half, going, "Why is the scheme the way it is right now? Why are we not helping ourselves?" And I'm not saying Josh didn't do that, but you do have to wonder, like, that second half, they did play and tailor to what EJ wanted. You do have to wonder if Josh is more like, "Hey, I trust the OC. I'm going to run what the OC says," because there are QBs that'll do that. You talk to enough folks in leagues, you listen to enough folks from leagues and podcasts or on media, and there are guys that they'll just take what they're given and they'll run it assuming it's going to work. I'm not saying Josh is that guy because I don't know him enough, and maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, there's a bit of in-game evidence where I'm like, I don't know, man. Things kind of, you talk at half, things change, and your voice might have been heard there. But that's just something I think I saw that maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but it certainly seems to play a little bit more in favor when you compare it to the rest of the year, the previous 9 weeks prior.
Absolutely. And I know that I mentioned the defense. Now, to me, this man right here, not only is he amazing, and, there was a whole lot of talk of, is it going to be him or is it going to be Tizzino from Pittsburgh? And honestly, I find it funny in a sense that the conversation for like defensive player of the year or like tackles leader, interceptions leader, that kind of stuff was between players from the 2 playoff teams, which is always a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you think that Ginda was like the anchor to the defense, or how do you feel the makeup of the defense was this year?
Well, from my interview I had with defensive back Levante Taylor, I had asked him and wanted to confirm, is Frank Ginda your vocal leader? And he said yes. So I definitely, and given you watch the games, too, he very much is the voice. He's the one getting the radio calls, but he's the enforcer. He showed it this year, over 100 tackles, 3 interceptions, which was, and I'd have to double check this if it was staying tied at the end of the season, but going into week 10, it was tied for top interceptions in the league, like 3 total with a few other defenders across the USFL. Definitely was the driving force. I mean, Breland Speaks has his own. I think that he gave a bunch of juice to a position that underperformed last year, which was defensive end and edge rush. Led the league in sacks with 9 sacks, had a bunch more pressures. I think Garrett Marino hasn't gotten enough credit. He's been as much as he was at the time, somewhat controversial signing for given how his CFL tenure tended. He did, of course, make amends. I will put that out there to be fair. He has been an outstanding interior lineman this year, had a bunch of impact in weeks 9 and 10. And yeah, I definitely believe Ginda is the leader of this defense without a question. And Hugo here brings up something I definitely will say, and you're bringing it up too with this, Tyler, because Tizzino, it's been really Tizzino and Ginda. They have been like the cream of the crop gold standard of linebackers in the USFL. Chris Orr you can throw in there too, but I think Tizzino and Ginda have that half a tier higher up on the list in terms of guys you go, that's a damn good linebacker, And I think given Frank's contributions, again, you're up there helping lead the league in interceptions for a single performance, a single season. You are the only linebacker in the league that hit 100 total tackles in the USFL. To me, given the fact that he was that much of a driving force, he's got to be my defensive player of the year as well, like Hugo's mentioning. But he's definitely the driving force. We won't know if that's true, by the way, until next week from what the sounds of it on who, if he does get that award. I think he should.
Mm-hmm.
He, I know that Josh Love, we were just talking about like player of the week nods and how that might skew like performance and stuff, but trust me, he had 4 of the player of the weeks for defense out of the 10. They were all well deserved. You can look back at the stats and performances. Losses might happen, but individual performance, he was outstanding week in and week out. And he was that driving force. Seriously, I mean, one of the true leadership voices on that team this season, from just talking with people and talking with Levante, absolutely without a doubt. That man deserves whatever's coming his way in terms of if he gets looks this offseason. I hope to God he does. He deserves that next level of the NFL, even though if that would hurt, not to have a all USFL linebacker. This league is still about getting guys to the next level. That is the core. So I'm still hoping he gets that shot elsewhere. I'm still hoping he gets that defensive player of the year nod. And, for my Panthers, I hope he gets a shot to have one more week, and that would be to play in Canton a second straight time. Because I love watching him play. He is so aggressive and fun to watch as a linebacker. He plays the position that angry.
Oh,
it's really good. It's really good stuff.
Absolutely. You bring up defensive player of the year, and I feel like this is an okay topic to talk about, since to me there's potentially 2 guys for me that from the Panthers that could win it. And I do think the man on screen probably will, and rightfully so. But for me, it comes down to 4 players. It's Genda, Breland Speaks, Reuben Foster, and Tizzino. I think that those 4 have really separated themselves above the pack on the defensive side of the ball. And it makes me think that the game that we're going to see this weekend is going to be based around the defense as a whole.
It probably will be. I mean, it really will. I mean, even if we're talking about, for example, I gave props to, and you did, I've heard you say this too, but I've gave props to the Pittsburgh Maulers offense for getting slowly but surely progressively better throughout the year. They still give up way too many sacks. And that is one of the common threads that they have had in each performance against Michigan, is that the Panthers have had their way getting to the backfield against Troy Williams and whoever they've been facing. So even with that being said, and the Maulers defenses have played just that bit much better each time, oh yeah, it's going to be defensive. Oh, yeah. I mean, we've hit the under on both those games. If you want to talk betting odds, we've hit the under on both of them each game. I'm not much of a, I'm not a betting, I'm not a betting expert, although I know enough terminology where I could tell you that, I mean, trends are going to say you're probably not going to see these guys have a combined 30 points, or it's very unlikely. They hit 30 points one time out of the 2, and it was just barely hitting that 30 mark. So it's going to be ugly. It really will. Again, and even that, EJ Perry, this is only his second week. I expect better play, but keep in mind, best defense in the league. They also got plenty of pressure on Josh Love their last time out and got several sacks on Josh Love. It's going to be an ugly fought game. Someone's going to have to come out on top, and it's going to be whoever slips up the most on the offensive side of the ball. Simple as that. Really, Michigan has done their part in both those contests. All they're asking, they're looking to Eric Marty. Like Steve Brown, I imagine he won't say this, but in his head, he's probably looking at Eric in practice going, please, I am begging you. I am begging you guys to hold that end of the bargain this time. Because it really, no one will say this in the locker room unless team chemistry is completely broken, which it doesn't seem that way. Mm-hmm. But it really is the offense has to hold its bargain. That is the thing that has failed them each time against Pittsburgh. They really have to hold their end just a little bit more than they have been. You can't score 7 points again. You got to get to double digits. You got to give a bit more of a, I would say, competitive edge. And you got to be able to put pressure on Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, even with turnovers, they've been going, you know what? That Michigan offense has been dreadful. It's been terrible, as Charles Barkley would say in his own way. And it has been. That's how I would look at it. Okay, yeah, we gave up that fumble, but you know what? Someone on that side's probably going, I have no belief that they're going to score on us. And so far, yeah, been kind of the case. It's been that dreadful. So that's just all I can tell you. Ooh, you got the spreads and all this. All right.
Yeah.
They're saying 38.5 total. I'm slapping the under hard. I would be and again, bet at your own discretion. We're not going to be one of those shows I'm not going to be on one of these shows and say, oh yeah, this is guaranteed, because I've been there on radio broadcasts and I go, what's wrong with you? Is what I think in my head. So yeah, discretion advised. Betting, not an exact science. Betting, do it responsibly. But yes. I would take the under at 38.5 points.
I will say, I was looking for a setup like this. I did find a website before I found this that the spread has actually gone up, but it still favors Pittsburgh. This was from 4 days ago. It's gone up to Pittsburgh -3, and the over-under has gone down to 38. So it's still roughly about the same, but I definitely agree with you. We only saw them reach 30 one time, and I can see to a degree why. And to Hugo's point, yes, it's such an L, because once you hit a cold streak, you are like cold for a long time. And I wouldn't, like you mentioned in our Discord to someone in the arena football chat, if it's not NFL or college football, I wouldn't bet on football. But I do think it'll be closer to 30 than it's been. I do think the under will definitely still hit. Again, the under advisement, we don't advise to take our word.
Right. Betting's not exact, but if I was a betting man, I would feel a little bit more comfortable taking the under, given the fact that 30 points has been the max out of any of these games that they have scored points. You are not going to get a barn burner. If you do, then man, we are really in for a treat, and we're going to light up social media with a lot, because I have been the fact that the Maulers even got to 23 in one of these contests, I think, is worth noting. It's just that's it. And again, Michigan's averaged 7 a game because they've only scored a touchdown a game. It's been that abysmal on their side is the deal. Oh look, Balloon Sundew's here. I know he's the resident Pittsburgh fan, one of the resident Pittsburgh fans in the Discord we're in. Good to see you on here. I know you're infiltrating the Panthers talk, but here's the deal, man. I've given you plenty of praise. Here's the thing: best defense in the USFL, and there's no argument anymore. There's no Generals players that are trying to throw that out there. Panthers have a great defense, but I can't say they're the best one overall. I think that is Pittsburgh and what Jaron Horton has there. So, but that's going to be the biggest obstacle. How do you crack Pittsburgh's defense? And do you have enough explosive talent and QB will to get through that is the bigger questions. So that I think are your two things going in. But otherwise, low scoring game. I have no doubts in my mind this is going to be an ideal fun game for me would be 20-17. That is what I hope for. Maybe 20-10. You'll see something like that. Maybe 17-10. So it's going to be low. There's no 30 burgers being dropped here. There's no 27-24s. You're going to have some low in the mud type of play. And it's going to be like that old school smash mouth football.
That's what we like.
Yeah. Except the loser goes home. I like that. Rock, paper, scissors in Canton, Ohio.
Except the loser goes home.
Except the loser goes home. Hugo, you've been a treat, man. Let's see. And Balloon, this is what and it's something that I think a lot of people are wondering here as I'll read the comment. I just don't see how Perry does anything against the Maulers D. I love the story, but other than his RPO game, he's not going to be better than Josh Love. I don't know. Again, my take on it is this. It really comes down, and first off, that RPO game, again, they teased it and used it sparingly against Philadelphia. There are hints of it. EJ is very much more mobile than Josh in a lot of regards. So hopefully he uses that to help buy a little bit more time and he gets a little more comfortable after a week. It is going to be hard with 2 weeks as a starter in practice. I am curious to see if they can, as we were talking, does Pittsburgh allow, with their defense, enough opportunities to allow a passing game that's on a timely, efficient manner? The 5-yard catches that allow the receivers to go yards after the catch. Pittsburgh can counter that by just having good defense and tackling principles and saying, 3, 4, 5-yard catch, stop you right there. You can force an incompletion. 3rd down and 5. They're protecting the first down marker. You throw it 3 yards, and Gilbert tackles them a yard short. 3-and-out punt. Like, that's what you could have as the counter right there. Or get good pressure. That also does wonders. Credit on-time passing. Usually you get the ball out before you're even getting someone in your face, but good time blitzes can also counter that and can make you panic if you are not settling down in the pocket. But I think it's the big question too. Like I said, do you have enough on the offense as the Panthers have right now to get going? Even more so, you can even add the running game, which Michigan's run game has taken a nosedive this season. Yeah, Reggie Corbin's not been as effective. Stevie Scott's not been as effective. It's been more of I think just as a checkbox mark rather than the necessity like it was last year, where it felt like the offense ran through Reggie Corbin and then everything else followed afterward. This time now it's more we have to force the pass because the run has been wildly inconsistent game to game. And I don't know how much you're going to find opportunities, but if they somehow find a way to eke out that on that side of the ball, then maybe there's a shot. If you can get Reggie hot, which he hasn't really been hot since they played Philadelphia. I mean, there's not too many times. He's broken a few runs, but like his best game of the year came against Philadelphia week 2. The I'm going to kill him game. There's the shirt you're wearing right now and that I bought that says give me the ball. I love Reggie. But whether it's been just scheme design or blocking schemes or whatever, his best game was in the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. So you have to hope you're hoping that he digs deep or that somehow between him, AJ Richardson, and Stevie Scott that they can pull up some sort of competent running game to allow EJ Perry to get maybe less pressure thrown on him. I don't know if that happens though. I'm going to still be, of course, the Panthers fan I am and say they're going to win because I'm in rally mode right now. But it's hard. Like, you have to do gymnastics to justify that win in my head. So, this is very much a heart feel for me. This is not the mind is not choosing. It's the heart this week.
So, in your opinion, what do you think is more important to you, or what would be more one-uppity-ish? If somehow the I almost said Maulers. This is the Panthers, Mike.
I mean, we have to mention the Maulers because they're playing them. So,
yeah,
it could also be because Balloon's in here and talking Maulers football, in the chat, which, hey, he's all for it. He's already predicted Maulers win 23-10. So, feel free. Feel free.
Do you think, in your opinion, would it be? It's almost the going back. It's almost like going back to, like, I know this is spring football league show, but it's almost going back to like last year's college football playoff. As an Ohio State fan, would you rather beat Michigan and still make the playoff, or would you rather win a national championship and lose to Michigan? Well, if you ask me, I'm going to take that ring every single day. So I know that our dream matchup would have been Panthers, Gamblers for it all. So
well, I mean,
if the Panthers win, if the Panthers win the championship, would you rather take the championship this year and lose to the Gamblers next year so that ref has the lead, but you have the overall, like, we did it first?
Oh yeah, we're playing hypotheticals here, huh? I mean, if it secured me a ring this year, I could probably stomach it, because of the fact that first off, he's not just my co-host. He's one of my best friends. So like, I would be happy for him, even if we do go at each other and do these jabs throughout the season along with the bet. But I mean, yeah, I would choose to win it all because I get that ring. Like, again, you got to understand, like we said earlier, 2 weeks, a little over a week and a half ago, I definitely didn't think we were going to be sitting here. So, yeah, not exactly sitting here nice and pretty. Let's see here. Stars lost to the Generals both times in the regular season, just like the Maulers against the Panthers. I'm nervous still because we all know how that turned out. Stars lost to the Generals both times in the...
He's talking about last year.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, because I was like, if we're talking this year, they split because of the Luis Aguilar game. But you are absolutely right. I mean, keep that in mind. You know, if we want to play patterns, I mean, we can throw the pattern up. But there's a difference with that one, though. Like, even if I'm a Panthers fan trying to play the optimist card and going, well, yeah, that happened. But, I mean, Balloon will say this, too. I mean, that felt different. You know, like, I remember that Generals matchup, the Week 10 one, before they replayed each other. First off, they played back-to-back weeks. So you do get to automatically course correct yourself, right? Like, fresh film. You know exactly what you got. You know, there's no adjustments in between. You know, not saying that it's going to be massive ones between 2 weeks, but, you know, having that less week in between, you have less conversation with coaches to make changes, you know, that's kind of what I'm going. So that's the first part. Second part, Philadelphia at least was showing life in that second matchup. Like, it was a close affair in Week 10. And I think that what they did is that they just realized, hey, instead of playing more finesse, we got to play to their aggressive nature and just kind of punch them in the face. And that's all they did. They became the aggressors. You saw how they went after Luis Perez last year and essentially said, we're just going to make you uncomfortable. Like, screw it. You're not going to sit back there. We're going to punch you in the mouth. And they did that. And that's how they came out on top in what was an aggressive and eventually very chippy championship contest in the North, which led to kind of, I think, what we saw this year with a few kind of bitter talks in between as well. Let's see, Balloon. Yeah, Maulers have by 2 scores both times this year. It's different for sure. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't have the same, like, last year I think you could have justified it because Philadelphia kept up. Michigan hasn't shown me anything on the offensive side of the ball. Yeah. And that's in credit, as we've even talked and as the chat's talked, EJ with 2 weeks now. I have not seen anything where I'm going, yeah, confidently I can see this change. Again, I'm doing mental gymnastics right now to say what has to happen. Personally, right. I have some stuff I believe will happen that I do not want to talk in thinking of what is trending in that direction. But I digress. If EJ comes out and they do that offense they had the second half, timing-wise, they get opportunities and they just don't let Pittsburgh get into an aggressive attack mode all the time, there's that. And if they can find any running game, honestly, that's a bigger key. If they can find any sort of running game that they had from last year or the early part of the season with Reggie, that will be huge. It'll be huge. I would be dying to see Reggie Corbin from Week 2 emerge. No, Pittsburgh fans would. I definitely would, because I think that alone, it just throws your defense out of whack. You start focusing more on creeping up in the box. Then receivers have to either they get more one-on-one situations, which you have to be good on one-on-one, or you get more situations where your zones are compromised and you get a quarterback that just reads the zone areas in and finds receivers that are in those pockets. So that to me is bigger. If you can get a run game going, backs off pressure. It more focuses guys that are like antsy at the line. They're not 100%. Maybe they blitz, but maybe they don't aggressively as blitz. It's not like it's not like you're a mindless machine at that point if you're blitzing from like the linebacking core, like Tizino. Maybe he's got a second guess himself. Like he sees a play action, he goes, oh, stutters a little bit. And then EJ goes, just enough time. Pops one over the middle. Maybe. But that's a big maybe. I haven't seen evidence of that being that, but I'm going to lean into that because I want my Panthers to win.
Well, I mean, yes, that would be the problem with. See, to me, the problem with Pittsburgh is even if you get the fake from Tizzino, or the stutter from Tizzino, like you were saying, you still have to worry about that amazing, awesome hunk of a man coming off the edge, Reuben Foster.
Right. I mean, they have two great linebackers, and Reuben's healthy. He was knocked out for several weeks. Honestly, if he was in, you almost wonder if it turns into kind of like a breaker situation where the linebackers split tackles and maybe Foster overtakes Tizzino, or they both kind of bring their production down because they're overall a better unit fully across the board. If that makes any sense to anyone out there. That's I'm saying they're both good. It's just the stats wouldn't show it, and you start playing like this stataholic type of person going, well, the stats say, and it's like, well, hang on now. Like, let's read the room. Anyhow, I think, there's other weapons they have. I mentioned Tizzino as kind of an example. Mm-hmm. Obviously, Reuben is ruthless as a blitzer and in pass coverage too. He's great in all facets. He was a top caliber Alabama product that had his professional career derailed for reasons off the field that were later clarified and cleared up, and he has shown that he still is that talented guy. He came into the league, he proved what we thought was going to happen. When he's healthy, he's a game wrecker, and that's just one of the many guys on there. We're talking Tizzino, we're talking obviously Foster, we're talking Gilbert in the secondary. Bryce Tornadin still is very much an imposing force on that front four. Boogie Roberts, I checked the depth chart. He's going to be playing this week. So he's back in. Excellent interior lineman, as we've seen, and excellent entertainer, as we've seen too. But again, there's so many weapons across this defense. It is a daunting task. It's been done. Teams have found ways to score, or they take advantage of the offense's deficiencies, which is, again, their offense can't block really to save their life if you get enough pressure on them. But the counter is, at least they have the best defense in the league to back them up, to keep them in these games. So you have to play their game. You have to basically play the game at a pace where you either calmly and collectively find opportunities to get drives, and on the flip side of the ball, you still have to be providing pressure and take advantage of deficiencies in that Pittsburgh offense, which is pressuring the QB and slowing down what is, to me, a very average run game that the Pittsburgh Maulers also possess on the opposite side. There are opportunities for them to score. I mean, Troy Williams can definitely throw. He is a running QB. He has legs, so it's not an exact science. Isaiah Henney has been a really stellar receiver. Trey Walker still can catch. Bailey Gaither's not exactly there. And special teams is huge for them. Honestly, they have a better special teams unit to me than the Panthers do. And that's saying something, considering week 10, the Panthers basically won because their special teams unit helped guide the offense either into great possessions or got touchdowns for them. So you have a daunting task. Like Pittsburgh on paper, I think even with Michigan in, I'm still sitting here as a Panthers fan, I'm going, this to outsiders looks like Pittsburgh's going to pull the complete worst to first challenge and get all the way to the promised land. So a lot of daunting things, but a lot of it comes down to if you play your cards right. Like last week, that's all that Michigan did. They played their cards right. They did the things they needed to do. They won, even with all the stuff on paper not stacking up. Can you do it a second straight time? That's what people are asking right now.
So before we go into our last little segment, let's see. Hugo asked, do you actually see Reggie Corbin do well against the Maulers defense?
Yeah, man. Do I think that he will do well? Survey says uncertain, because I think it's going to be leaning more towards a no if I were to do this by like a percentage scale or like a odds scale. I mean, if we're going to go and just talk about the Maulers defense in general, just kind of going back to defensive statistics here while I am on it. Let's see here. Rush yards a game. Actually, if you look at this, I mean, they give up only, looks like 83 a game right now. So, yeah, they are the second best rush defense in the league by only a yard difference compared to Houston, who's number one. So that is all. I mean, again, that's an imposing front seven by itself. Is the deal. Like we just listed off 2 linebackers that do their damage. Boogie Roberts is an excellent run stopper in his own right. It's going to be hard. Like, it really will be hard to find opportunities. But if they can find a way to crack the code, that's the thing. You open the run game. If you unlock the Reggie Corbin that we know is there, that 500-yard, burst of speed, ball of energy that he is, sky can be the limit. But you have to find those alleys. Michigan has not been able to find those alleys pretty much all year. That's the big question. And again, best rush defense in the league, one of the top pass rushing defenses in the league on that opposite side. Tall order ahead. Very tall order ahead if you're trying to run on them. Because otherwise, again, it'll come down to timely passing game and getting your receiving options on an efficient catching schedule and not making mistakes with catches. Like Joe Walker, I swear to God, Joe, if you drop 3 passes again, he has been feast or famine all year. That man can have 150 yards passing, or he can completely bog down offensive drives by dropping a pass that goes right into his chest. It is feast or famine. There is no in-between Joe Walker. I love you, Joe, but you got to catch the damn ball. I'm sorry. You got to catch the damn ball, Joe. Please catch the damn ball this week. I am begging you. Like, seriously, someone in the writing community for the XF and the USFL put Joe Walker on the all USFL team, and I went, really? Why? He's been hot and cold all year. He's had a few good weeks, and then he drops passes on a regular basis. How are you telling me he's an all USFL talent? He's great for the Panthers when he plays and catches the football, but he doesn't do it enough, and it makes me want to go bald with pulling my hair out. I'm at that threshold when I see him drop a pass. I yell so loud in my apartment that I think my neighbors will report me to the apartment complex for being that loud when it goes through his hands. Joe Walker is that type of player. I love him. I know what he can be. He's an ex-Chicago Bear as well, so I have that little bit extra on it too, where I'm like, Joe, you're a Bear alum. Catch the damn ball, dude. And I mean, this is the Panthers fan base. You see Hugo right here, same deal. Like I said, people are like, dude can catch for 140 and like 7 touches. Or he can have like 2 catches on 9 targets and completely whiff you on a night. He has the potential for all USFL, but he consistently either drops the bag or then has a night where he goes off and shows that, yeah, I'm actually like this. I just, need to be 100% focused and coming in like that the entire time. It's maddening, is all I'm telling you. I mean, this is more of a call to me as a fandom, less to the Joe Walker as the person, because I'm not taking anything away from that, but I'm just saying, Joe, if there's any week you want to catch on a regular basis and not drop a 3rd down and 5 conversion on like a slant route, it kind of would be this week. Just saying, kind of would be the right week to go big or go home.
Now, the other thing I've noticed too is he'll catch the ball, and if catching the ball is not the problem, it's getting past the line. And if he does get past the line, then you're talking like chump change. Like it ends up being like running 7 yards to gain 2 or 3.
I mean, that does madden me too when some stuff happens. I haven't noticed that as much with him. My thing is he has like untimely drops where it's like 3rd down and he just flat out drops one in between the diamond in his hands. And to reference the diamond, as it's taught by receivers, you go for a catch, you want the ball to hit square in the diamond, and you collapse in, you grab it with your gloves. If it hits here, I'm yelling at you if you drop it. There is no excuse. That QB delivered it right into the diamond. That's your fault. Sorry. You have to, I mean, it might be a little high. I'll give it high catches. Okay. Maybe we'll play 50-50 on whose fault it is. I don't like doing the blame game as much, but like, if it's right here and you drop that damn thing, I'm yelling at you through the TV. I hope you hear me through the TV at that point. Balloon Sundew, he really struggles when he plays outdoors. In Ford Field, he's been more consistent. Well, no, actually not. That's kind of funny. In Houston, remember Houston? His week 1 game, he killed it in Houston over playing in Memphis. I was at that game. He came out and had 100+ yards, 2 touchdowns. He was unstoppable. It was like, sweet. Joe's building off his year last year. He was a little off in Canton week 2. He actually, his other like blowout game was an outdoor game in Canton, Ohio against the New Jersey Generals. He actually has been playing better outdoors than he does at Ford Field, which is crazy. I mean, credit, the weather's still been nice for these games, but he's not been playing up to it. I'm just like, again, he's a talented receiver. He's got to catch it. Like if he catches just 2 of them, like 2 drops, drives continue. Like it's every game he at least has one, or almost every game he at least drops 1 drive continuing pass, and I lose my mind. Yeah, like I mean, I think that was week 2 against Philadelphia. That's the one I'm referencing, because his game against New Jersey in Canton, he was unstoppable. Like he had a hell of a game. That was the one he caught a 10-yard catch, broke 2 tacklers, and ran up the left side for like a 60-yarder. And then, yeah, Hugo brings up the point. We cut Ishmael Hyman, who's now on the Pittsburgh Maulers.
I was going to say
I didn't even bring him up as a passing option, but he is a solid option. You know, and again, Joe, like, I don't know, I can keep going on all day of me being frustrated with Joe Walker, and it's mostly because, like I said, Joe is a good talent when he catches the football. The guy has range. The guy has the height and the length. He just has to come down with these easy catches, and he hasn't been doing it in the right I would say, incrementation to where I can justify it. Because, like, unlike a guy like Jace Sternberger, Jace has caught 7 TDs, and he's still one of the top tight ends in the league, or if not the top definitive tight end in the league. He has untimely drops, but he makes up for them. Joe will have untimely drops. He'll get a few more catches, but they won't be ones that are, like, justifying the, like, game-daggering type of drops that are, like, conversions on 3rd down or conversions on a deep ball. That's the difference. Like Sternberger gets away with it because he's caught 7 TDs. He leads the league in that regard, and he also can contribute more so and recover those mistakes. Joe has not done that enough. Again, frustrating because I know he's that good. That's the part that kills me. If you were even sensing I'm talking about you, I hope that motivates you to have your best game of the season. Simple facts, right? Simple telepathy right here. I'm hoping to God it does it. That's all I can tell you.
You're making me gonna have to clip this and make it entire.
You should very much clip it. Maybe not the whole thing, but at least the telepathy thing, because I think he needs to hear it. I think he does. This is his week to ride or die right now.
True. Hugo.
Yeah, no joke for you, Hugo. Thank you. Do it for the children, Joe. Do it for the children over in the Detroit Metro. Hyman is listed as receiver 1 this week for the Maulers. That shows you how much people think that was a mistake for letting him go. Like, not just me. I mean, we're talking like Jake Ball as well, like Panther Shadow podcast, Cheese Soda online. He was, I mean, I'm upset by that, but he was livid over that, and rightfully so. They needed receiving help still. You know, don't get me wrong. Cole Hicatini, he's actually had a pretty solid year underneath the under the cuff, I think, as a tight end. You know, Trey Quinn, he stepped up. But dude, you let go to Ishmael Hyman, and Joe Walker has been more inconsistent throughout the whole campaign. I'm sorry, something doesn't add up unless it was deeper than just that. So, but it is what it is, man. We did something similar to that last year. I'm forgetting who we cut and let go, and they went on to a different roster. But this is 2 years in a row. We've kind of had like one cut, and the guy just vanishes off the roster, and we're going, why was he let go?
Could it have been the worst QB to ever play football in Mr. 6 something Paxton Lynch?
No, it wasn't him. I mean, Lynch was on there pretty much was the whole year, and he gets a good chunk of responsibility. As much as he gets flacked on in his XFL performance, he gets a huge responsibility for us even getting that first overall pick in the first place. He had his game of the year against Pittsburgh last year. Mm-hmm. Like that game sealed us for getting our first overall pick and our draft rights for Jarrett Horst out of Michigan State, which his future's up in the air, but up in the air, of course, where he's going. But hey, having the rights to a guy that's that massive of an outside tackle, I'd take it if he happens to want to come this way. If he needs the USFL for a route, so no, it wasn't Paxton. It was definitely somebody else. I'll have to go back and research messages, but this is the second straight year Panthers front office has let go of someone that we sit here and go, why was he the target? why was he the one that has to take the martyrdom from the fan base? But I digress. Joe Walker, you're another key to the game, or I think another key to this contest. Trey Quinn is definitely a good baller, but seriously, if Joe Walker's on his game, that could be so much more helpful for EJ Perry. Again, it really just comes down to, is he locked in or not? Because he can get locked in, it just doesn't happen enough.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I did the last thing before we get into the final segment. How do you feel, because of the chat? I think I skimmed over it. How do you feel about the special teams matchup?
I did kind of answer that a little bit with Balloon. I do believe that I think that the Maulers overall have a bit better special teams unit. Kicking is pretty even, but I will say Chris Blewett has had a little better accuracy than Cole Murphy this year. So there is that to lean on. If I'm talking any other special teams options, I mean, you got Isaiah Henney and Josh Simmons returning kickoff and punt returns. Mm-hmm. They have both been two of the best return men in the league. It's actually another facet of their game they do really well that allows their offense to kind of really become more of a opportunistic offense, if that makes any sense. They take advantage of good opportunities on field position from their special teams and from their defense, getting turnovers and forcing the possession battle to go back towards the opposite end zone. So that has been an understatement. I think that they do get the best nod. Obviously, Marcus Sims, we saw this past week, showed that his return chops, it had been Reggie Corbin, but I think giving Sims more than nod allows Corbin to not get as banged up, because as much as, it was great to see him have that all-purpose yards lead for most of the year, it kind of led to him getting more bumps and bruises. Wonder if that did affect his rushing ability a little bit as the year dragged on. So I'm glad that he's doing it, and he showed he's got the talents to do it. So Sims showed it last game. But overall, though, I got to give the edge to Pittsburgh. They're, like I said, return men and their kicker are top in the top three in the league. Mm-hmm. I can't pass over that. That is a checkbox in their direction.
So for this last part, we're gonna do picks, and I wanted to start with the chat. That way you can just kind of rant and rave all you want.
Okay.
So Balloon, like you mentioned, he's got Pittsburgh, obviously, 23-10. And Hugo thinks Michigan 23-17. Where do you stand?
So Hugo thinks he's going to go with the Panthers. And I think just for like I said, for the sake of the fact that I am going full fan base this week, I am going to take Michigan. I think it's going to be 17-14. Like I don't see any team getting 20. It's going to be ugly. You're going to see these two it'll be basically opportunistic punches on each other in terms of who gets turnovers, who gets drives that happen to manifest. But I'm going to go with Michigan. Just again, my heart's saying it's willing their way, and they don't feel like I know Pittsburgh definitely has they didn't think we'd be here mantra. I think what Michigan's trying to do too, going the fact that they were even feeling way more down and out coming into last week. I'm hoping they ride that coattail even harder and try and run with that. And I'm hoping a second week of EJ Perry helps with that too. But I definitely think it's going to come down to either some last possession turnover, or as Balloon just posted, a last-minute field goal. Like, it's really going to be like very much a battle of whose defense plays it out just a bit better, and who offensively, I had 17-14, but 20-17 is still a field goal. It's okay. I'll run with that too. Why not? We'll say who gets the 20. I'll throw that up there as a joke, because I was saying earlier I didn't think it would be that. But I really do believe it's, if Michigan's going to win, you have to be a little more. You have to be cautious. You have to preserve your offense, and you got to take advantage of what your defense you can provide, because you've seen in both games, they're going to get their chances to slow down Pittsburgh's offense. But can you take advantage of those opportunities that Steve Brown and Mike Nolan's unit gives you? That's up to Eric Marty and company. Heart says that they can do it. My mind would say otherwise, but I'm going to ride with the heart, baby. I'm riding with the heart. Cole Murphy knocks one in. Game winner from not a record length, but I think he knocks it in from like 50 plus. Give it a little bit extra edge, and they get to live one more week. Cole Murphy, Hugo. Cole Murphy through the uprights. Panthers win. Michigan's sideline is going nuts. Says, well, actually, that's even more enthusiastic and bombastic than Kurt Menefee would even do it, because Menefee's not even that loud of a play-by-play. Maybe Joel Klatt does it like that. Kurt wouldn't do it. Kurt's very much more like I like Kurt Menefee, actually. I've grown to like his like more relaxed and kind of calculated play-by-play style. It's not like, say, my all-time favorite's Kevin Harlan, by the way. That man should have way more NFL work than he gets. I wish he was as much as Jim Nance is a great guy, I would love if Kevin Harlan got the premier seat at CBS, because he deserves more up-tier work like that. Let's see here. Balloon Sundew. I hope Kugler and Klatt are on the call. Kugler's a good one. I like Kugler. Like that. Really, the alternative ones for both networks aren't bad, because, like, personally, out of all of them, my favorite play-by-play is Jack Collinsworth on NBC. But I do think Burmeister does a great job as the secondary option. Kugler's not, like I said, Kugler's good too. Menefee I've grown to like him. He just is a lot calmer than the other three. Like, he takes a much more of a cool, collected character approach when he does calls. Let's see. Kevin Harlan needs to be cloned to become an announcer for every sport. Yes, he does. I mean, Harlan is a god in basketball, but dude, he is such an underrated football play-by-play. Menefee just sounds like he doesn't want to be there.
That's kind of funny.
I thought he was like that with XFL 2.0, and he somewhat started that way with USFL. It's gotten better in more contests. I mean, trust me, it's a little bit more of an adjustment when you listen to like Kugler or Collinsworth or Burmeister, because again, they're more bombastic, they're more energetic, they know how to kind of enunciate and kind of get you hyped up for something on a correct nod. This is a jab. I don't usually like doing these, but for example, XFL play-by-plays, they're terrible at knowing situational hype. They are completely hype. The NBC and Fox guys, they're pretty good at controlling that. USFL or XFL guys I've seen with ESPN, dude, not every play is a game changer. I'm sorry. I'm just throwing that out there because while we're on it. But yeah, we need a USFL podcast to do announcer tier list. Maybe I do need to put a caveat out there that if we do that, I would wonder if the league going like, what are you dissing our announcers for, man? No, I think that'd be a great idea to have as like a discussion on it, because I think that's something that, like, I would love to have guys from Awful Announcing on to talk about that. If you've ever been on that channel, I love their write-ups about the television industry and the radio industry and sports. They are fantastic. So that would be a great one to have. But yeah, my prediction, I'll go with the adjusted score, 20-17, game-winning field goal. Cole Murphy knocks one in from 50 plus. That's it.
Now, I do want to mention the irony with the Maulers kicker, as I'm sure we're all thinking in our heads. Chris Blewett. I mean, usually that's a bad name to have.
I mean, it usually is, but
he
usually doesn't blow it, so.
And you were talking about
also yelling phrasing. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. The betting odds.
Betting
Betting in
odds.
sports culture. It is still it's got a long way to go, but it's at least starting, I guess. XFL commentators when the 1 yard line affects the under by 0.001 points. Oh my God! He might lose his money. Proceeds to then put a sideline shot of the sideline analyst watching a field goal to see if he loses his bet. And the sideline analyst gets the larger screen while the field goal kick actually gets the smaller minimized screen on the double box. That's the type of crap that I'm talking about right there. That's S tier broadcasting, ladies and gentlemen. That is absolutely what I tune in for. I tune in for that. I tune in for destroying, talking about stuff I don't give a care about that's not football related. And I'll also put a personal diss because I did say this past week about Big E. I totally tune in for Big E and freaking whatever. I forget the tag team group. The New Day. I tune in for the New Day for 2 plays to get interrupted. That's my style of football. Like, you can clearly tell I'm hardcore. If you're taking away from me watching a play, I'm going to rip you because I'm watching football to watch football. I'm sorry. That's the primary number one. Brian. I got Brian and I who is Webb from Hammer Time, by the way. I do have to he is a good point. Quick, check Mark Gilbert's pockets. I do worry about Mark. Joe Walker's in them still. Great follow-up, Brian. Great follow-up.
Joe Walker's in them.
I mean, he's not wrong. That's the thing, though. But Joe's going to have to – it's going to be a tough matchup. Mark's going to be out there all day, all USFL talent himself. Definitely going to have some worries to deal with. Anyhow, before we go here, Tyler, what's your prediction? We can't leave here without both of us having a score prediction.
Exactly. Well, this is obviously a Panthers show. So obviously Panthers win.
And you just invited in the DMs a Maulers commentator. So that is bold strategy, Cotton. We'll see how that one plays out. I jest, but still. Oh, look at you!
You're
11.
Score.
Wait a minute. Okay, how do we get to 11? Let's. I want to hear that breakdown because 11's. That's one of those scores you go. Well, that's odd. How the hell did they hit 11?
I think so. Here's the thing. Okay. And hey, I was hoping he'd come on and tell us, but there you go.
Nah, it's cool. To be fair, he's also getting ready to go up there, so he's got a bit of a trip.
True.
Yeah. Brian, though, I mean, I'm not shocked. I mean, look, we're both playing by our heartstrings, so he's obviously going to pick Pittsburgh.
11.
I think he has a bit better of an argument for Pittsburgh personally, but he's still going to pick Pittsburgh. I knew that was going to happen coming in.
3 field goals and a safety. Actually, no, that's not what I thought.
So you're not doing. So how is the score? I mean, the other one I can think of is, here's one: 9-point play and a safety.
Close, but no.
Okay. Now I want to. The other one is 8-point play and a field goal.
Yeah, basically.
All right. I mean, I didn't mean to run it down the list and make you admit it, but you had me curious. I was like, is it the 9-point play? Do we see a 3-pointer?
I mean, I would love to, honestly. Of course, we're almost at the end and it starts to blow up. So
how it is with live streams, man.
Yeah.
You never know.
I think Troy Williams has another crazy touchdown throw like he did against Pittsburgh when our buddy community legend Ducky ended up on TV and he hit the receiver in that back corner.
Okay.
I think it's going to be a longer one. I think it's probably going to be about, I don't really know if he can hit a throw like that, but I think it's going to be about 45, 50-yard bomb. I love to see something like that.
Dang.
And if they don't go for 3, I think they go for 2 and get the 2. And we're talking Pittsburgh. I mean, Michigan has pretty well wrapped up towards the end of the game. They don't really score much after 8. I'd say they jump out to an 8-0 lead. Michigan takes over with their defense. Then you get a stalemate because both defenses are notching it up. Pittsburgh on the final drive with about 5 seconds left. Blewett kicks a 50-yard field goal. Actually, you know what? Heck, we'll say he kicks a 60-yard field goal, and it goes straight through the uprights. It barely gets over. It's like one of those Justin Tucker type of kicks where it's like from deep, but it barely gets over, and that's how the game will end, 17-11.
17-11. Unique one. Not usually often you see it, but hey, you know what? Anything's fair game. Panthers, though, I'm glad. Hey, you're on my side. Why not? Let's ride it. Rally mode engaged. punching it in rally mode in my world is of course my get up, but I also could mean rally mode where I'm in the back hills of Europe with my Subaru WRX riding the hills. If any of you are rally fans, otherwise you don't give a crap. This is a football show after all. Yeah.
So I know for the podcast you have your fandom. That's why I wanted you on for this. But I know for the podcast, oh, you're welcome. I know for the podcast, no bias all here.
Well, I mean, to be fair, it's a Panthers show. What did you expect?
Yeah, that's the whole point. I took the Panthers. Oh, Julian. Dogfight, Maulers 17-16.
But you can see, like, all these picks, I mean, it's similar vein. No one thinks this is going to be a high-scoring game. It's going to be a classic black and blue, bruiser type of affair. It's just going to come down to who makes more mistakes, like simple as that. Who screws up and gives the ball over the most and gives up possessions the most. Simple facts, opportunistic. Two good defenses, two of the best in the league, playing each other. Shouldn't be any other way.
Which leads me into, at least for me, my two last questions, unless anyone else has any questions in the comments. What are your thoughts on league fans? Because I know I'm having the works to have a show for every team in the league. And so I consider myself more of a league fan, even though I tend to lean towards Pittsburgh and Michigan, so I don't lose whoever wins this game.
You playing the diplomat card. You got feet in both sections. You're ready to jump when you see one going down.
So how do you feel about like just league fans, and with the way that this game is shaping out to possibly be, do you think that even though both games are on OTA over the air, and when USFL games are on OTA, or as I always say, antenna or non-cable, they tend to do better than on cable as far as the ratings? Do you think that, depending on obviously how the game goes, if it's close, like some of us are saying, or actually I would say most of us outside of Balloon, freaking 2-touchdown win, okay.
Well, you never know.
But yeah, that's
following the trends.
Do you think that this game could actually outdo the South game in ratings, or do you think they'll be about even because they're both really good matchups?
Tough. Ratings are not an exact science. I mean, no matter what, you're going to get, if this was on cable versus the over-the-air, simple fact is you would lose out on ratings. Like, no matter what, cable in the USFL has been lower ratings. It's just been how it is. I do think, because we've seen with the trends, NBC does usually draw the bigger audience than Fox. It's fascinating. I mean, NBC is the larger television station in terms of viewership than Fox. It's been a trend like that since last year, in the year prior. I do think that they're going to outdraw Fox. Now, I think if you're asking what you're wanting to hope for ratings, I mean, I think last year's a good measurement if we're going back to the 2022 playoff ratings, which, we saw both of those games finish sub 1 million, but high 900s. Like that's what I'm looking at in terms of like ratings. I think like NBC, you should be able to push 900 plus for a playoff game. It's going to be an uglier one, but you should be able to. It maybe a little harder this year because it's the 4 and 6 matchup thing people can get over. I'm not 100%, but that is a possibility. It's a larger network. Fox finished underneath that at just missing 1 million last year at 9,998. So I think with Birmingham and New Orleans getting a round 2 this year on Fox, that one I think has the likelihood of hitting 1 million. I think New Orleans. I think the North game finishes below it, but I think it's going to be a decent draw because it's NBC. Okay. And then your ratings, if we're comparing the ratings with stuff, I'm not going to get into that because that's just I'm not in the mood. But and because it's also very complex narrative, you can break down data whatever way you spin it. There's tons of ways to slice up data on ratings. I think it'll help with your overall ratings looking very solid at the end of the year. Same for the championship. NBC's hosting the championship. It's a bigger channel. In theory, the championship should get, you hope for at minimum the same ratings as last year's championship on Fox, which drew 1.5 million. That's what you're aiming for. Like that's to me is the baseline. You're aiming for that. NBC should be able to draw more than that because it's a bigger channel. But time will tell. We'll see how their strategy is. I mean, it's a different type of year. Remember, NBC doesn't advertise as much as Fox. They are the third party recipient. They're the ones buying in. They're not the ones mainly funding and running it. So they do have, of course, their say, but they are very much more hands off than Fox is in this venture. So we'll find out. But I think that you should expect, at least a bit better ratings than like what your average like 600 to 700 have been all year on OTA. Like you should expect like 800 to 900K as your like baseline for these. And that's also counting a second year drop off possibly. I hate doing that, but like that is a thing, So, we'll find out. If anything, I'm just going to go into this, focus more on, I'm enjoying the games. Ratings are secondary to me because I believe that they're just happy to be able to play, and do this as they need.
Whoa. So, if this is true, we got breaking news.
Well, I mean, he would know, and also you would possibly see a transaction on that bad boy as well, and it is indeed there. New Jersey has been kind of active so far. It's been reported that they did re-sign DeMornay Pearsonell, who had an early season injury that knocked him out for the beginning of the year. Had a lot of promise. We were hoping he would be big for them. And for a team that was as least explosive in that regard as the Generals, they kind of missed him. Prukup getting released, though, is fascinating.
Didn't he just have a kid?
I mean, this year he did, yeah. Or at least he was on track to when they talked, but I'm pretty sure that baby was delivered. I am totally going off the cuff with that, so don't totally agree with me unless it is you find something. But yeah, Prukup being released, I mean, it is kind of a surprise when you consider that it is early off season, but I mean, the Generals, they're doing what professional teams do, which is ironic given the fact that New Jersey didn't run personnel like professional teams, but, they're basically starting cuts, evaluating the roster, and trying to retool for next year. It's off season, it's game time. And I think Mike Riley, as long as he's wanting to come back, which I mean, I've told some folks I'm wondering if he will or not. He's a bit older. He's, more in for, trying to get back to the game and kind of give opportunities. And I know that there were some personnel choices with some of the staff. We heard about Trey Williams having an issue with his usage this year. But I mean, they're in off-season mode, and teams in off-season mode, they start adapting, adjusting, and keeping tabs with their guys. Generals players are going to go get signed on, and they're going to want to make choices on adjustments for rights and seeing who they want rights to possibly re-sign or keep on roster next year. And Dakota it looks like not in those plans. Or he might be moving on to somewhere because he got a release. So not 100% on that story. That could be that too, but it is the off season. Generals are free to start thinking about next year. They just got to be careful because they did get penalized last year for going overboard with signings and releases. That got them penalized for a first-round draft pick. So you got to be careful with that too. They did get into hot water last year, and so they're starting fast, but keep within the league limits before you go too far. That's my caveat to this. Is all. It is interesting though. The Prue Cup's already gone. I mean, he was at the end of this the third string QB. Barrier did take the second string QB position because he was picked up off of waivers. Mm-hmm. So, if anything, they do move on from the quarterback that I think that they were less focused on anyway, as well. So,
So this is funny.
And then Balloon makes a good point if you want to bring that up. The Generals have the first overall pick this year. So, there's no tank bowl. They don't have to fight for anything. Easy out. All they had to do was just go to the end and just say, we got the worst record in the league at 3-7. No biggie.
Hopefully you actually do something with it.
So we'll find out. I mean, it's rights first, so you're not guaranteed the players, but we'll see who they pick. That'll be what's fun is all.
So I bring this up not for the ratings part. It's the all caps piece in this.
Okay.
The no more hubs. How do you feel about the hub situation?
Oh, you want me to talk about that? I don't think there's a really winning answer on that. Anyway, look, if you want me to be honest with you, I'm like everyone else. I want to go out of the hub system. I want to go be in my markets. I want to be like a regular league. Like you see the ratings. You want to talk about ratings? You know what? One of the teams that's ratings darlings in the league is the New Jersey Generals. Credit, big market, but any game that they're on, if you notice a pattern, they generally draw a crowd. Pun fully intended by using that word. And so I do think, I want to see them out there in the I said tri-state area on Discord, the Northeast corridor there. I want to see them in the Northeast corridor with Philadelphia. Or I want to see Philadelphia out there and start getting those guys out. But I think that's not fully going to happen, or at least I think that there's a possibility. They are trying their damnedest, I know, to get all of them this year. But as they have stressed so much in reports and in press conferences, it is all about growing at a sustainable rate that makes sense. They do not. Fox is very much in the business of not just throwing money at a problem and hoping to God it works. They calculate moves. That is how they've done things since they've been in television. That's the deal. And I mean, Balloon makes a point. You can't fully go on that because if they don't have all the deals in place, and they've said this too, they want good deals where they can go in, help the communities and give back, and the communities give them a great spot to play. If they can't find those, they have good spots in terms of hubs. Canton loves them. They're not going anywhere. You already see they're selling tickets to Canton next year. No matter what happens, if it's a team, if it's a hub, they're locked in. Canton loves the USFL. So you have that hub locked in. Birmingham, as much as there might be, maybe there's burnout on hub games, maybe there's not, I don't know. But they have a great relationship with Birmingham. They're not going anywhere. Detroit and Memphis, Memphis, I mean, to me, Memphis, like I said early in the show, Memphis was a home run. They hit a home run out of the park with Memphis this year. They're not going anywhere either. They've invested money into the Liberty Stadium, as we saw. They're there to stay. So now it's about trying to find those new avenues. I think Best was brought up in our Discord. New Orleans has to be next year. There is no way, given the engagement, the merch sales, and how good this team is. Their second straight year, and the rivalry they have with Birmingham down the coast now. There's no way they don't go to New Orleans. Not to mention WGNO News in New Orleans has been doing great coverage with interviews with Coach John DiFilippo and of course with Coach Larry Fedora last season. They've been covering them with not being in a market. That is begging them to go there. So, I think a lot of us want go talk with officials, talk with folks over at Tulane, at Yeoman's Stadium. Great place. It's already wave themed in terms of mascot. The seats are light blue. The turf has light blue accents on it. Like it's freaking like the Breakers were designed to play there. So go talk to them, figure this out, and get them settled first. After that, kind of up in the air. Personally, I think you put New Jersey and Philadelphia in a hub on the Northeast corridor, like in Philadelphia, where Philly is right on the New Jersey line, close enough to New York. You find a place to play, you hub them together, you spread that area and get that rivalry going between those two fan bases because it's close enough. They're that compact. Like, to me, last year, I thought they were going to get a hub in Philadelphia and put those two there and say, you know what? There we go. East Coast teams, we'll get the best case scenario for one of them, and then we'll just kind of work our way in like that. And then Houston, that's the one I think is like the most controversial one. Pittsburgh, I think it comes down to where they find place to play. I could see Pittsburgh staying in Canton another year because it looked like they were starting to draw solid crowds for those home games. So maybe they stay there. Houston's the one I think it gets a lot of people in a tizzy because Houston's games don't get great ratings. If you look at the two lowest rated football games on air this year in the USFL was Houston and New Orleans, and it probably was not because of New Orleans. I'll give you that. It was probably because of Houston. That being said, the legacy brand the Gamblers have is, to me, powerful enough to justify them staying there. So I think you try and work it out, or you hub them. Now, the other outlier, because the league does have other brands they can lean on that they have trademarks for. Yeah. If for some reason, I don't like this option because I like the Gamblers. I like their brand. I like the Bandits too. I actually hated that the Bandits had to get shelved because they are also a legacy brand in the USFL. John Bassett is a legend in USFL and spring football history, and it was a shame to hear about his team, or at least his brand that he started and that got revived, got put on the sideline. But it was for a better cause, to keep building the league. I would hate to see Houston get shelved to do that. But if it was a good deal, if you find a Memphis deal, you get in connections with someone that, wanted you there, they help you build up relationships with the city, and you get ingrained, then I can justify it. And I can go, as long as you want to bring it back. Because they've said they want to bring back Tampa Bay at some point. They're saying it's not dead, it's a legacy brand. But as long as, if you say, people keep bringing up Austin, they have the Wranglers brand. I would revive the Austin Wranglers. It's a bit far of a haul. That's the difference. It's much farther west in Texas than Houston is. Texas is a big-ass state, and Austin is very much more West Coast in Texas than Houston is. But if they got a good deal, I mean, there's a good brand. I would do, the Wranglers wouldn't be a bad brand to bring in and kind of revive. I know there's been rumblings of Canton. Maybe Canton's getting a team, which, hey, honestly, that'd be kick-ass because, seriously, Canton being one of the original NFL teams, the Hall of Fame has been arguably one of the best partners the league could have asked for in terms of exposure and being friendly and giving them places to play, the championship setting that they've set up. That relationship's deep. They keep securing that. I mean, they have enough access to Cleveland and Pittsburgh in terms of markets. There's other, Central Ohio markets that are somewhat nearby, like Akron you can pull from. You can make it like a small local team, kind of like the USFL's Green Bay. There's stuff you can do there. So, there's a lot of stuff in the offseason with movement and hubs that is going to be fascinating. I want all 8 in their cities, but much like I have stated in several episodes, I will always say this first and stay to this record. I am about stability over what looks pretty every single time. You cannot tell me that if it looks like it is going to threaten the stability of growing a league, it's either not worth doing or it has to be on the threshold of doing. That's the thing. Yeah. If there is a great chance of high risk to counterbalance or make the high reward look worse, I play it safe, and again, it's, as Daryl Johnson has said, crawl, walk, run. That you got to do the steps right first before you build a base. That's how the NFL did it. I know it's a different time, but the NFL struggled its way to the top. in the early going in the first several decades. The USFL is only in year 2. It's going into year 3. You got to build a base and start small. But you can do it and you can grow every year. But you can't recklessly grow. That's the thing they're trying to avoid. So if they can do it, fantastic. But grow at the pace that makes sense for fans that want more growth and for you to not go blow your budget out of the water and basically can this thing in a short duration. Because that will rip my heart out if they cave to something like that. Because I get it. It's annoying. It's not what football teams do. You play in your market. It sucks. I get it. But I want spring football first over that. I want it to exist first. That's more important to me. A lot of people don't think that way. I think that way. I want that to be the case. So there we go.
I mean, you know, you've made a lot of good points outside of the Michigan Panthers stuff tonight. I think a lot of what our league, or since I'm technically supposed to be covering both, I'm going to say this league does better than the other league, as a lot of our Discord members like to say, is that, you know, they have the actual backing financially. This league didn't blow any money after the first season. But I mean, if you look at season 2 for us and season 1 for the other, I see similarities in some ways. I mean, okay, whether they win or not, we're going to have a 4-6 regular season team play for the championship. They had a 4-6 regular season team play for the championship.
Yeah, I mean, no one sees that coming, by the way. I know we've had between leagues, you know, we had some folks clown on the Renegades getting the championship because they went 4-6. And it is ironic that we now have 2 teams playing 4-6 that beat each other up and are now playing for their right to be the 4-6 championships squad that is looking to go 500 for the year, is the thing. You know, I mean, I do want to put that, you know, for like example, the Renegades instance, to kind of defend that, like they ended the year good. Like they were a good team at the end of the year. You know, they swapped in Luis Perez. Offensive coordinator got out of the way and let Luis do what he does. And they opened the offense up and let that defense kind of settle in and do its thing like it had been doing all year. You know, for these two, it's a little different. I think it's more defenses really did carry these guys. That being said, the Maulers do have, to me, more the like Renegades characteristics, unless EJ Perry is like a Luis Perez. But right now it looks like the Maulers are more in that case that settle. But like, it is fascinating. But I mean, it's been good football. Like no matter what, like between the 2 years of between the 2 straight years of spring football with now 2 leagues, we've had, for the most part, we've had good to excellent football for 3 different seasons, if that makes sense. Because you have 3 seasons between 2 years for the 2 leagues. So it's been good football. Like that's the thing. Like as long as the football's good and you can keep growing yourself and you're not completely shattering your guys' viewership, which I mean, you saw how the ratings ended for regular season. Both of them was dead heat, you know, and credit. Like we said, you can cut the data a million ways. I can talk about how, you know, cable games in the USFL dragged down that overall rating tenfold. I can talk about how, you know, the XFL switched off FX to get away from bad ratings on FX at the end of the FX run. Like there's stuff I can go into in depth. But at the end of the day, they're both holding their water. And, you know, if you look at that first year effect, even the USFL's case, you know, still found a floor in ratings like they wanted, like people wanted to see. You just got to keep growing. Ticket sales, that's the big bonus this year. Ticket sales were up. Like the in-local production stuff, that's what I think you'll take away and you want to see keep growing. And then now you just want to keep seeing ratings stabilize or keep on trending up, find ways to build. But yeah, man, I mean, it's good football. You're right. You know, 4-6 squads, it's still been good football. You know, I mean, hell, Pittsburgh, any of you Pittsburgh fans in the chat, you'll know it's been 1-score games. They've lost by 1-score close contests. Birmingham, they took Birmingham to the wire. It came down to Deion Kane scoring a return touchdown to end that game against Pittsburgh. True story there. You know, Philadelphia, they had to me, a fluke of a 37-point show off game against Pittsburgh. I still have stunned that they dropped 37 on that Pittsburgh defense that night a few weeks back. I don't know how they did it. They found a way, but they did. And again, that's just how the season's been. They find ways. They found ways to win at the end, or they've been in close games where it just feels like, if we just shored up like one or two things, defense keeps us in there. But if we just would have finished some things off or found ways to adjust earlier, or if we had put in Troy Williams earlier, because James Morgan was a statue. So, yeah.
So to kind of, I guess, close us out, because if we can work a schedule out, we can always have you back on for something or other. I'm sure I can find something to ask you to come on for.
I'll definitely keep myself open. It's getting busier, man. I'll tell you, the USFL.
Oh no,
podcast,
I know. It is for me too.
I got some big plans for myself, for my angle of it. I got some big plans to upgrade the show next year. That we're going to be basically once the season's over, like within a month, we're going to sit down and start brainstorming to upgrade the show year over year again. Because that's how we do it, man. Every season, it's about upgrading, getting better, making a better show for people. So, but hey, I'm always good for talking with buddies, sitting down, chatting football. Like football is definitely a pillar of my life. If you get to know me, football is it is a pillar, man. That is part of my life and what I enjoy doing. Or watching.
I know earlier in the comments, people, since we gave our picks, want to know from a Michigan fan perspective and a league fan perspective. I don't know if you want to really give it away so that it doesn't ruin the show next week for USFL Pod, but people wanted championship predictions.
Are you talking who wins?
Like who is, because we took Michigan for obvious reasons.
Right. I got Michigan. I can give you my other pick.
And do what?
I can give you my other pick. I'm not going to give you my champion though. I'm going to save that one for my show. Not to be rude. It's just I am going to hold that one for a bit more thought because we haven't even gotten through the playoff week. I will say, I do have Birmingham repeating as the South champion. That being said, it's going to be like the previous two games. It's going to be tooth and nail down to the wire, but you're going to see more of an offensive slugfest. Mm-hmm. Whoever flinches first, essentially. That's how it'll work over there.
So you do think it'll be Michigan and Birmingham?
Yeah, my heart says Michigan, and then my mind is picking Birmingham. I'm more confident on the Birmingham pick, although I say that, but then that does sound weird given that New Orleans did just run a 3-game win streak and has kind of course-corrected themselves. Mm-hmm. But I do actually have a bit more confidence that Birmingham's going to repeat, at least as a South champion.
See, that's where I'm torn because I'm like, well, okay, if Birmingham wins, then I'm worried that it's almost a guarantee that Birmingham wins. Now, if New Orleans wins, I think whoever comes out of the North, because we're a Michigan show, we obviously said Michigan, I think it's more beneficial to Michigan if New Orleans wins. I think if New Orleans does win, that Michigan does win the championship. I do see it being an even more exciting game. I do think that it's more along the lines of what you were saying for this game. I think it's going to be somewhere around 30 points. I would probably right now I would probably now say.
I do find that kind of funny with his comment because now it's like I'm double homering for this. I'll be honest with you, my secondary fandom, because I have a lot of friends in Birmingham, besides just USFL net newsroom guys. Like I'm talking like guys from like some of the hardcore 104 section. Like I do have that secondary fandom as Birmingham. I still though pick more mind over heart with that. But it is fascinating that there are people that do want to see Pittsburgh, New Orleans, like just because there are folks that do like change. So, would be fascinating. Not going to lie. Although it'd be funny because if you think about ratings perspective, actually, ratings-wise, I think, I'm not saying the league wants this. I don't think anyone will ever admit that, but they're probably going, Michigan Birmingham would be pretty good for the TV ratings, right?
At least one of the two.
Well, I mean, Michigan's drawing crowds. Like they've been a ratings darling at times over the last 2 years. So, but I mean, honestly, that's not what should be to draw. It just comes down to who's better. I don't focus on ratings when it comes to picking games anyway. It's just that you think about it sometimes, But yeah, I mean, so wait, so you're not 100% with your pick, or is it that your mind says one thing, your heart says another on the South?
Yeah, my heart really wants New Orleans because I think New Orleans is going to be the key to the North winning championship. I think if Birmingham,
you want them as the sacrificial lamb? Dang, okay. Man, hope Loden doesn't hear this clip. That'd be wild. Like, yeah, man, I'm all for them getting their ass whooped by Michigan.
oh.
That's
I don't know. Like, okay, the only other way, Michigan or Pittsburgh, we're gonna stick with Michigan. The only other way for the North champion to win, and I hate to put it this way too, I honestly do, because I never wish this upon anyone. You're gonna have to basically Booby Miles, Alex Magoo, have Reuben Foster come in one way down low, Tezino come in the other way up top, and
Jesus Christ! I hope that doesn't happen. By the way,
I hope it doesn't happen.
I definitely do not want to hear that call on the field.
I am not. I know I'm smiling, but it's just because we're just like cracking it up. But I honestly do not wish this upon anyone. But I'm saying because of how dominant Birmingham is, I just think that's going to be the only.
So, in a lighter term, you're thinking via, of course, the nature of the game, that if Alex Magoo gets knocked out, Jalen Morton won't be able to carry this team to victory. That's what you're putting out there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty. Sundu, there's got the reaction I would have if I threw out the freaking chopper to basically destroy Magoo's legs.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think that's a good time to just cut the chase there.
That's just kind of
though, man. Just gotta say that. So.
Oh yeah, definitely deserves MVP for sure. 100%.
Yeah.
I guess that's probably about everything.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, pretty good show. Covered a lot of bases today. Kicking things off for that Panthers episode and all that. So, good times. Good times, man.
For those of you watching that don't watch the podcast or listen to the podcast or are in the Discord, go check them out. USFL Podcast right here on YouTube. You can find them, I think, anywhere that you listen to your podcasts.
Oh, I mean, yeah, you can find us on Apple. You can find us on Spotify. I mean, you can find us any place you want. Stitcher, not SoundCloud. I don't think you can go on SoundCloud, but, you can go on Stitcher. You can go on Pandora. I mean, you name it, wherever you listen to stuff. iHeartRadio, you're going to find the USFL Podcast. Bigger thing, though, while I hype this up, I'll take over the hype on this one. Spring Stock 2, or damn it, I keep saying this. He's gonna listen in and be like, Zach, we talk about this. I mix it up every time. Summer Stock 2, Summer Stock 2023 is coming up next week. We are a week away as of this recording or this live stream right now as we're finishing up. June 30th, July 1st, 2 days, 2 massive events. June 30th, 5 p.m., Hall of Fame. Going to visit in the front of the Hall of Fame with whoever wants to join us. We're going to tour the Hall of Fame. Did the same thing last year with a group of fans of the show. It was a blast. Can't wait to see who comes out with us to tour the Hall of Fame once again. Hoping to see you there. And then the next day, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on the northwest corner of Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. We're going to be at one of the entrances for those gates. I'll reconfirm that gate at a closer to time, but we will be located this year on the northwest corner of Tom Benson Tom Benson Stadium and Canton, Ohio. You'll get to see us. We're still planning on getting food, drink. We have plenty of guests coming, a lot of community guests. We're locking down a few league guests right now. It's just because kind of the time frame of things, it's a little tighter right now for them. But we are locking some guys down that that'll break one way or another, and you'll definitely be surprised at who we might be having on and in store. So stay tuned for that. And then basically we've been queuing it up. 3 o'clock, you got Summer Stock. 5 o'clock, you got the Dylan Scott concert right behind us when you go in. And then we'll be inside and giving you all things you need to see live or stuff on the ground from the Championship 2023. It's going to be a hell of a weekend. Great way to start 4th of July. I really like that it ends on Independence Day weekend so far. Been a good way to tie in the end of the season, and it's a great value. Again, think about this. I mean, for $25, last note, $25, you get to go in and see a football game that should be the 2 best teams in the league facing off, along with the fact that before it, that same ticket gets you a concert to watch a multi-platinum country artist. It's the cheapest ticket you'll ever get for the most value you'll ever get in one of your things in your life, without a doubt. Pro football, a championship playoff game and a award-winning country artist all in the same package. That's nuts. And I know that sounds like an ad, but I love saying it because it sounds that ridiculous in principle, but yet the league's doing it. That's wild to me, And they can do it. That's the thing. It's not that they're throwing it out there as oh God, we need to do this to entice. They did a concert last year with Trace Atkins. It's part of the plan. Remember, they calculate this stuff. That is part of the plan. That's what's wild about that. So good times, man. Can't wait to be there next weekend. Gonna get in on Thursday. Should be a good weekend, man.
Absolutely. The plan is to also be there as well, unless something comes up and changes things, for sure. So my idea is to do a post-game kind of maybe 10-minute video with whoever, or just by myself, on site. So I know some of those I've done, I think at least one, maybe 2. And some of them did okay. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Should be a fun time. I mean, you'll have a bunch of the community there anyway, just besides you and I and a bunch of the newsroom guys. So, you have guys from the network coming down, guys from News Hub coming down. It's big old celebration, not just for spring football and for that season for those guys at Fox and NBC, but, for a bunch of guys that do a lot of this, what I would call very much a passion work. It's very passion work for this. Yeah. We love it all the same. Doesn't matter what we get in return. It's all about the love of the game,
Absolutely. Oh, and before we go, if you haven't already, subscribe to USFL Podcast. Check them out. They're awesome.
Appreciate that.
Subscribe over here to Buckeye Mike. We just finally, either earlier today or yesterday, hit 100 subs.
Yeah, give us man some subs. He got a few more while we were talking. I was happy to see that. Give him a sub, man.
Want to keep pushing towards 200 and just keep chugging along.
There you go. Incremental goals, dude. Good goals. Good goals.
Got interesting stuff ahead. I also have a lot of changes and things in store for the channel, and just trying to push out whatever I can when I can. I know, it does hurt the channel when you can't almost constantly upload because the algorithm, stupid thing.
I agree. Algorithm's hard, man. Well, I mean, we deal with it too on our show. It's hard to calculate. You just got to keep the grind going and do the best you can to post. I'm with you on that. Tags, all that other jazz. I mean, yeah.
But so thank you in the audience for joining us tonight. I hope everyone, even though I don't think much of anybody's still here, I hope everyone enjoyed the show. I know it was a long one. That's okay. We had interaction, so I'm glad that it went long. So thank you for being here. I hope you come back. We have many more episodes here in store. Obviously not with Zach, because Zach is busy with his own stuff.
I'll try. I'll if I can jump on. That's the thing. Timing happens, but yeah. I mean, you'll have plenty of other ones on. You go with Jay. You've gone with Jake on here. I mean, you got guys that come on here all the time from the community. So keep that up. I love hearing when the guys get to jump on your show, Tyler.
Thanks. But yeah, so comment, like, subscribe, and hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you in the next one. Everyone, have a good night.